The claw came out of nowhere, and the interdimensional tunnel folded like wet paper. One second I was flying through the void between worlds with my family. The next, something the size of a mountain range was trying to eat all 5 of us in one bite. Let me be clear about who us was. 2 Dodi wives, my wife's father, also a Dodi, an ancient dragon patriarch, also a Dodi, and me, the man who killed Lan Jinghai, burned the strongest soul in history down to ash, and spent the last few decades being the undisputed final boss of an entire continent. 5 apex predators in one tunnel, and something in the dark had just looked at us and thought, snack. I shoved everyone toward the exit. Linger turned back. I pushed harder. Mei Hua grabbed my sleeve. I peeled her fingers off one at a time and smiled like this was fine. Go, I'll be right behind you. You said that at the Hun Clan War, Mei Hua said. You came back 3 years late and missing a rib, and yet I came back. Go. Wei Zhen and Kai Long understood first, because old men always understand retreat faster than young wives do. Kai Long grabbed both women by the chi and hauled. The 4 of them shot down the passage in a streak of light, and I turned around to face the thing with the mountain-sized appetite. Some context, because I'd earned a quiet retirement, and the universe clearly disagreed. Decades ago, I ended the war on the Fighting Chi continent, killed the Soul Clan's emperor, took his everything, married the 2 most dangerous women alive, raised a daughter, and settled into the extremely demanding schedule of being worshipped. Statues went up. Sects renamed themselves after my techniques. My daughter learned to weaponize the phrase, my dad, in schoolyard negotiations. It was, by any sane measure, the ending. Then Linger and Mei Hua came out of seclusion as full Dodi, glowing, gorgeous, and instantly in trouble. Then her father, Wei Zhen, broke through. Then old dragon Kai Long. And that was the problem. Our world was a middle-tier plane, and middle-tier planes have a rule. Reach Dodi, and the plane itself starts pushing you out, like a landlord who noticed you got too rich for the apartment. The pressure builds daily. Stay too long, and the world starts trying to crack you open just to relieve itself. So we said our goodbyes on Twin Emperor's Mountain. Yunfeng pretended he had dust in his eyes and hugged me hard enough to audit my skeleton. My daughter did not pretend anything. She cried, threatened to break through to Dodi by next spring and follow us, and knowing her, started training that same evening. Ming Yue punched my shoulder and told me to send word the moment I found a plane with better food, and the 5 of us stepped into the void passage toward the higher world, the Dodi continent, where people at our level were supposedly as common as street vendors. I'd assumed the trouble would start after we arrived. The trouble had opinions about scheduling. The thing in the dark unfolded, and it was a dragon, a golden dragon so massive that my soul perception gave up measuring and just filed it under weather, one horn broken, eyes glowing with a color no living thing should have, and riding its skull like a tick in a black robe, a figure that radiated something I'd never smelled in my life. Not death chi, not soul flame, something outside, something that made my 22 heavenly flames pull back against my spine like dogs before an earthquake. The dragon struck. I answered with the Buddha's Fury Fire Lotus, the same technique that once cracked a continent, and the explosion lit the void like a newborn sun. The dragon flew through my sun without slowing down. Cool. Very cool. Love that for me. The claw that followed would have opened me from collarbone to belt if the void had normal physics. It didn't, so I only lost my sleeve and my confidence. I threw a second lotus, watched it get inhaled, like incense, and started doing the math on how long a Dodi can play tag with a mountain. The math came back rude. Then the smallest member of my family saved everyone. Ran Feng, the little fire spirit born from my purifying lotus demon flame, the kid-shaped flame who calls me big brother, suddenly burned white hot on my shoulder, and a seal I never knew he carried woke up. A reincarnation seal, old as the fires themselves, rising off him in rings of script that made the whole tunnel hold its breath. It didn't touch the dragon at all. It touched the tick. The black-robed rider screamed in a language made of chewing sounds, and the dragon's horrible glowing eyes went clear. Turns out the mountain-sized monster wasn't our enemy. It was a hostage. The thing on its head had been wearing it like a stolen coat, riding a legend's dying body around the void as a hunting hound. The freed dragon's first act was to roar at its own skull. The second was to slam its parasite into my reach. 22 flames, 1 formation, 1 very angry me. We peeled the rider off and burned it down to a screaming smear that cursed us in that chewing language until the last syllable carbonized. And I learned my first fact about my new home. Whatever that black thing was, there were more of them, and they were the reason this dragon, this legend, was a ruin. His body was already gone, burned away in a war I hadn't heard of, in a captivity I couldn't imagine. What we'd freed was only a soul, ancient and golden and very, very tired. Little friend, the soul said, in the tone of a grandfather who has decided you are now family whether you agree or not. You have no idea whose life you just saved. None, I agreed. You have no idea whose retirement you just ruined. Retirement. The golden eyes narrowed with something dangerously close to delight. The flame on you belongs to my sworn brother, boy. Your retirement was canceled before you were born. He was the Golden Dragon King, firstborn of the 9 sons of the Dragon God, once the strongest dragon alive short of divinity itself, currently a homeless ghost with excellent posture. And he knew my teacher. That's how I ended up in a hidden immortal cave in the space between worlds, kneeling in front of a soul I'd already met once before, the true Zhenwu ancient emperor, not the burnt fragment I'd inherited on my old continent, the desperate leftovers that had made me a Do-Di, the real one, the complete remnant, saved here for 10,000 years, waiting in a pocket of nowhere for exactly one visitor, me. "You're late," he said. "I wasn't aware I was expected." "You weren't aware of anything. That was the design." He looked me over the way smiths look at a blade someone else finished. "Acceptable, barely. Sit down. The seal on this cave buys us one conversation, and I intend to overfill it." He didn't waste the reunion on sentiment. He wasted it on homework. First, he ripped the flame mantra out of my soul and put back the real one. I want to describe the sensation accurately. Imagine learning, at my age, with my titles, that the technique you built your legend on, the mantra you bled for through every tear of your life, was the abridged edition. A copy of a copy, cut down for a lower world. The true flame mantra unfolded in my mind with 6 realms stacked above everything I knew, and the authorship line hit harder than the technique. Zhenwu didn't write it. An ancestor of my own clan did, the Shao clan. "Your family name is not a name, boy," the old emperor said. "In the 7 realms, it is a warning label. There are beings above this sky who would burn a continent to confirm a rumor of your bloodline. You've been wearing your father's medals to school your whole life and mistaking them for a haircut." Second, he gave me the Diyan ring, a storage ring with 100 zhang of space, a slot for a soul clone, and a built-in emergency escape talisman. Single use, activation condition, certain death. The single most ominous gift I've ever received. You don't give a man an ejector seat unless you expect the plane to catch fire. Third, the homework itself. And this is where the cave got cold. There are 36 sacred flames in the 7 realms. Fires above my heavenly flames, the way my heavenly flames are above a scented candle. Living fires. Old enough to have opinions, strong enough to enforce them. There are also 36 evil clans from outside the realms, the things wearing black robes and stolen dragons, and the count is not a coincidence. One set exists to burn the other. 10,000 years ago, the realms barely threw the outsiders back and paid for it in emperors. The seal keeping them out was weakening. A century, give or take, before it broke, and the war came back for everyone I intended to still be alive. My job, in order, collect the sacred flames, rebuild the Golden Dragon King a body, clear his name with the Dragon Clan, which apparently believed things about him worth clearing, and under no circumstances activate the Shao clan mark on my forehead before I reach the Battle Immortal realm, because the moment that mark lit up in public, every powerhouse in 7 realms would smell it, and most of them would come running with knives, and some of them would come running with worse. "Any questions?" the old emperor asked. "Dozens, but one first. What happens to you?" He smiled and dissolved into sparks, and that was the whole answer. "That's the second teacher this bloodline has cost me. I'm keeping a tally, and someday, something is going to settle it." The Golden Dragon King moved into my ring like a retired uncle moving into the spare bedroom, and on the way to the exit, he gave me the orientation lecture. The Do-Di continent, 4 times the size of my old world, split into 4 subcontinents. Here, Do-Di wasn't the peak, it was the entry fee. 9 stars of Do-Di, then Battle Immortal, then Battle God. Each realm its own 9-story tower. Alchemists ranked Emperor, then Immortal, then Saint. And me, the invincible Yan Emperor, conqueror of the fighting Qi continent? On this continent, I was a 1-star Do-Di, a freshman, a strong-ish teenager in a world of armed adults. Decades of being the final boss, and the universe said, "Lol, new game, back to level 1, buddy." I checked the void passage for my family and found nothing but settled dust. The ambush had scattered us across an entire continent. Linger and her father thrown one way, Mei Hua another, Kai Long a third. Each of us had left a thread of soul power in matching soul jades before we jumped, so I knew they were alive. Alive, and very far, and every single one of them was now a level 1 stranger in a world that eats strangers. I stepped out of the void onto the Xuanling continent, the weakest of the 4, with a ghost dragon in my ring, a doomsday deadline in my pocket, and a family to find. The sky was lovely that day. I remember being personally offended by that. The Golden Dragon King's first piece of grandfatherly advice came before my boots even settled in the dirt. Whatever you do, stay away from the Xuanling royal family. That whole bloodline is rotten meat wearing a crown. His second piece of advice came 4 minutes later when we heard a girl scream in the forest. Also, go save her. You just said keep a low profile. I said the royal family is rotten. I never said we were. That's the thing about living with a dragon in your jewelry. You don't get a mentor. You get a backseat driver with 10,000 years of opinions. The girl was a servant, maybe 16, running from a squad of hired killers with the professional calm of men who had done this before. She'd been running for days by the look of her, shoes gone, feet bleeding, still refusing to scream anymore because screaming costs breath. Their leader was a 6-star Do Sheng on my old continent, a demigod. Here, the muscle you hire when you don't want to spend real money. He landed in front of her, unhurried, and delivered the speech. "The Mu family ends today, little maid. Nothing personal. Hand over what your masters hid, and I'll make it painless." She spat at his boots. 16, dying on her feet, and she spat at a demigod's boots. I decided how this ended before he finished frowning. New offer, I said, stepping out of the trees. You leave the forest. The forest is negotiable. And who are you supposed to? I flicked a finger. The forest behind him needed a new clearing anyway. His squad looked at the smear that used to be their boss, looked at me, and discovered urgent business elsewhere at a speed that improved my opinion of their survival training. The girl's name was Li Wei, sole survivor of the Mu family, not a great clan, just a merchant house that had been butchered overnight because somebody wanted a treasure map they may or may not have owned. She had nowhere to go, no power to speak of, and a cough that sounded like winter. Take her with us, the Dragon King said in my head. She's a stranger. She's interesting. Old dragons can smell interesting. It smells like feathers. I had no idea what that meant, and he refused to explain, because withholding information is the primary love language of ancient beings. So Li Wei came along, and somewhere in the first week, she stopped walking behind me and started walking beside me, and somewhere in the second, she started calling me Big Brother, and fine. I have a type, and the type is strays. Here's the strange part, the part I didn't tell her. Whenever she touched my arm, my battle chi recovered. Just a little, just enough to notice. Servant girls do not passively heal Do Di. I filed it next to smells like feathers in the drawer of things my grandfather was smug about. We needed money, information, and a base, which meant a city, which meant Qingcheng, the biggest trade hub in the region, a place where the street vendors haggle in 3 currencies and the pickpockets have guild dues. I walked in with a dead clan's orphan, a ghost dragon, and pockets containing exactly nothing local. I solved the money problem the way alchemists solve every problem. I made pills in a rented room and sold miracles to rich people. The Jubo Yuan auction house took one look at my sample tray, 9th grade golden pills, the kind their region sees at imperial birthdays, and cleared an evening slot. The bidding opened polite and ended feral, 5 million gold, plus a tiger crystal card, the black tier account the house only issues to confirmed Do Di, delivered by the branch CEO Shulan personally, who walked me to the door with the expression of a man mentally drafting a report titled, "We need to be friends with this person immediately. Honored master will surely visit again," she said, bowing. Honored master will visit whenever the rent is due, I said, which is monthly. Congratulations on your new regular. Money. Solved. Next, the cough. Because Li Wei wasn't just sickly. The Dragon King took one real look at her meridians and stopped joking, which frightened me more than the void ambush had. The girl had months. Her foundation was collapsing under something hidden in her blood, and the only fix was a foundation cultivation pill. A recipe with 107 ingredients, one of which was a magic core of an imperial rank dragon-type beast. Imperial rank, 7-star Do Di equivalent, on a continent where I was a 1-star nobody. Great news, said the dragon in my ring. I hear the local alchemist association is hiring. The Qingcheng Alchemist Association assessment hall smelled like burnt ambition. Young geniuses lined up with their lucky cauldrons and their nervous masters, and I walked in with nothing, because my cauldron days ended around the time I learned to cook with my hands. The clerk at the intake desk looked me up and down. "Where is your equipment, candidate?" I raised my palm and lit it. He wrote something on his form. I like to think it was, confiscate this man's paperwork. He doesn't need the entry level. The exam pill was a shaping pill. Standard test, 1 batch, 1 hour. I split the herb pile into 3 portions with 3 streams of flame, refined all 3 batches simultaneously in open air, and let Ran Feng hover over the middle one doing quality control, which is how the entire hall found out I travel with a live fire spirit. A fire spirit is the kind of thing alchemy families go to war over. The silence in that room had a monetary value. Somewhere behind me, a candidate's cauldron boiled over unattended because its owner had forgotten it existed. Somewhere in the back, a silver-haired girl watched me the whole time without blinking. I want that noted for the record. She started it. President Qin Shou graded my pill, checked it twice, called over Vice President Jing Yi to check it a 3rd time, and then asked me very politely to please attempt the Emperor rank 1st grade certification, right now, today, before I changed my mind or another city stole me. The certification usually requires 3 recommendation letters, Qin Shou said, tearing something up under the desk. We've decided the pill is 3 letters. The certification refinement was where the day got loud. The pill I chose came out well, came out too well. 9-colored pill lightning punched down through the roof to destroy my work because on this continent even the weather is a critic. The hall evacuated with practice speed. I stayed, caught the tribulation lightning bolt by bolt, and fed it to my heavenly demon puppet, which drank a divine punishment like soup and evolved a shade closer to gold, standing in the smoking crater with the satisfied gleam of a well-fed guard dog. Waste not. Then the pill itself woke up, grew a soul, and tried to escape. Newborn pill spirits do that. The good ones always run. Mine shapeshifted mid-flight into Linger's face, because apparently my own creation had rifled through my heart on the way out looking for a hostage. I hesitated for exactly 1 heartbeat. Then I snatched it out of the air. Using my wife against me, I told the pill. You were born 4 seconds ago and you're already fighting dirty. I've never been prouder. They made me an honorary elder on the spot, the youngest in association history, title only, no duties, which is the best kind of title. The soul-tempering trial that came with it put me in a mindscape duel, my dragon of will against their python of pressure, and my Huangchuan heavenly fury ended that argument early enough that the examiners billed it as a formality in the records. And before I'd finished signing anything, the silver-haired girl from the back walked up with a deal. Her name was Shui Lan, daughter of Feng Lin, head of the Yue family, one of the city's ruling clans. She had the posture of good breeding in the eyes of someone who hadn't slept properly in a season. "My father is dying," she said, no preamble. 9 nether flame venom, cold fire in the marrow. 11 alchemists have tried. 4 made it worse. I watched your fire spirit purify a tribulation-grade batch today, and I'm not leaving this building without you. That's not a request. No, it's a daughter. She put a card on the table. Name your price. I liked her immediately, which historically is how my problems introduce themselves. My counteroffer was simpler than her card. I needed friends with a map of this continent, and a ruling clan owing me a life is a very good map. We never made it to her house in one trip. Halfway there, the street emptied. That particular emptiness cities get when someone has paid the locals to be elsewhere. And a man in black stepped out of nothing. 3-star dough-deep perfection, 2 full stars above me, and leaking that same wrong, outside smell as the thing that rode the Golden Dragon King. "The maid," he said, nodding past me at nothing, because Li Wei was safely across town. "You've been keeping the Mu family's leftovers. I'll be collecting the girl and the scroll, and since you've seen my face, I'll be collecting you too." He was the real butcher of the Mu family. The killers I'd smeared in the forest had been subcontractors. This was the client. And he opened the fight the way corpse things do. No warm-up, straight for the throat. The street cobbles rotting black under his footsteps. The fight was ugly. My golden demon puppet took his hits like a landlord taking rent. Metal, screaming, holding. My fire lotus took his arm at the shoulder and his leg at the knee, and any sane creature missing half its chassis would have run. Instead, he laughed with lungs he technically didn't have and played his trump. A demonic shadow woven from hundreds of enslaved human souls, every one of them screaming. Every one of them a battery he was burning for power. The shadow rose over the street like a drowned god, and my strongest fire washed off it. You can't burn a wall made of hostages. I couldn't outpunch a soul engine 2 realms above me, so my grandfather borrowed my mouth. The Golden Dragon King took over my body, and he didn't attack the shadow. He talked to it, to the souls inside, about dignity, about the men and women they used to be, about how even the dead get to choose whose side they die on. 10,000 years of authority in one voice, rolling down that empty street like a bell. "You were farmers," my mouth said, "in a register I don't own. You were mothers. You were soldiers who died facing the right direction. And this thing spends you like copper. I will not free you. I am asking you to free yourselves." The formation's eye cracked from the inside. The enslaved souls turned on their owner mid-swing, and the corpse demon came apart like a puppet with every string cut at once, shrieking at his own weapon as it ate him. The souls had one request before they scattered: don't waste us. So I didn't. Their freed origin power flowed into me clean, given, not taken. That distinction matters more than any technique I know, and off the corpse demon's remains, the Dragon King quietly lifted a black scroll, the Mu family's famous treasure. The map an entire clan had been murdered for. We couldn't open it. It drank my flame, my soul power, my chi, and stayed shut, humming with a pressure that made even the Dragon King lower his voice. Whatever wrote that scroll was above him. To open it, we'd need the power of a sacred flame. Everything in my new life kept routing through the same to-do list. I found that suspicious, even then. The Yue mansion job went smooth by comparison. Feng Lin lay in a bed carved for a healthier man, frost flowers blooming out of his skin, 3 years into a poisoning his own alchemists called incurable. Ran Feng and I pulled the 9 nether venom out of him, thread by cold thread, through the meridians, my little brother slurping the cold fire like noodle soup and making faces at the flavor. By evening, the man was on his feet. By midnight, he was working. First Order of Restored Health, the 3rd elder, who had, surprise, been salting the family head's medicine for years on somebody's coin, dragged into the courtyard mid-denial. Betrayal from inside the family, the one dish every great clan serves, and every patriarch eventually has to eat publicly. Feng Lin offered me gold, offered me rank, and finally, seeing my face, offered me the thing I actually wanted, an open door and an alliance, sealed with the words, "This family remembers." Meanwhile, his daughter developed a habit of appearing wherever I was with pastries and questions about my hometown. "She's going to be a problem," I told the Dragon King. "She's lovely, like the little feather girl." Li Wei is a sister. That one is not planning to be a sister. He laughed for a very long time, in the way of a creature who has watched 10,000 years of men insist they have things under control. Then I locked myself in seclusion, because the soul's gift was still sitting in me unrefined, and unrefined power is just a loan with interest. 20 days of refining freed origin power through the true flame mantra, and the difference between the abridged mantra and the real one showed up on day 3. The real one didn't just digest power, it graded it, sorted it, and filed the best parts into my soul. I came out with a soul that had crossed into the mortal emperor realm, strong enough to walk out of my own body, strong enough to split off a full soul clone that thinks my thoughts and burns my fire. On the outside, 3-star Do-D, early peak, still a nobody by continental math, but a nobody with an emperor's soul is a very specific kind of trap for anyone who tries him. The Dragon King celebrated by assigning more homework. An immortal rank technique this time, the 7-fold heaven-breaking ruler, 7 escalating strikes for a heavy ruler, left behind by a madman remembered only as the 7-foot immortal. The technique came as a memory space. I stood in a phantom arena while a translucent ancient swung a translucent ruler and critiqued my footwork without having feet. Wider stance. The first strike breaks a wall, the 7th breaks a sky. You are currently qualified to menace a fence. I mastered the first strike in 6 days, which the Phantom grudgingly called not disgraceful, the warmest review of my education so far. 1 ruler strike down, 6 to go, 1 scroll that wouldn't open, 1 continent full of missing family. And then the invitations went out across the region. The demonic beast ruins were opening. The ruins sat deep in the ice and snow magical beast mountain range, the tomb complex of a beast emperor, a 7-star Do-D peak monster from an older age. The place had 2 famous features. 1, treasure. 2, a suppression field that crushed anyone too strong, which meant only the young and the reckless could enter, which meant every city in the region was sending its most insufferable genius. I had 2 reasons to go. Shulan needed crescent jade fruits from inside for her family's legacy. And somewhere in a tomb built around a beast emperor, there were decent odds of an imperial rank dragon-type core, the last ingredient between Li Wei and her collapsing foundation. A little girl's life, sitting at the bottom of a dungeon. So, road trip. The competition rolled in like a parade of future problems. Chen Guang of Wu City arriving on a literal chariot of fire with the smile of a boy who has never once been told no. A blind swordsman from Sword King City who navigated by killing intent. A beast tamer girl with an ice bird named Frosty riding in her hood. A bald spearman called Kalen who looked at everyone the way butchers look at livestock. A battle maniac ape cultivator, Long Wei, who greeted people by asking their weight class. A fox-eyed woman in a storm-colored dress, Su Fang of Wind Thunder City. And 1 ghost sedan chair carried by nothing, containing a thing politely referred to as the living dead man. A green-haired beast girl took 1 look at Ran Feng, opened with 5 million gold and an immortal technique, and tried to buy my little brother like a rare parrot. He's family, I said. Everything has a price. Sure, yours was your first impression. She followed our camp for 2 days anyway, upgrading her offers. 6 million, then a beast taming manual, then what I can only describe as a marriage-adjacent proposal aimed at whichever of us said yes first. Ran Feng hid in my collar. Smart kid. At the gate, the ruins opened with an energy tide that killed a dozen people too greedy to wait for it to settle, which set the tone nicely. The suppression field pressed down the moment we crossed. Anything above the young genius bracket got squeezed back out, which is why the escort elders stayed outside chewing their nails while their precious heirs walked into a tomb unsupervised. Sufang tested me in the crowd, 1 probe of soul power, met by mine, and both of us raised an eyebrow at the same time. 2 Emperor Realm souls in a field of children. Wind Thunder City greets the Dark Horse, she said. The Dark Horse greets the only other adult in the room. We shook hands like 2 arms dealers at a school fair and agreed without a word to stay off each other's calendars. Inside, the first stop was a poison lake with an island, a fruit tree, and a golden python the size of a river system coiled around both. The water introduced itself by dissolving a careless prodigy's boot, then the prodigy. The living dead man's sedan floated past all of us on grave mist, snatched the fruit off the tree, and glided away in smug silence, with a fake. The tree grew decoys above and kept the real fruit below. I knew that because the python told me. Why did a giant illusion python make friendly conversation with me instead of eating me? Because of my wife. Mei Hua's bloodline, the 7-colored sky-swallowing python, apparently reads as royalty to every snake in creation. The guardian took 1 taste of my aura, recognized the family registry, and practically saluted. Marrying well, the most underrated combat technique. It led me down. 3,300 meters below the lake, where the world flipped into ice over lava, it showed me the real crescent jade fruits, and something else. A 7-colored healing flame flower, a treasure that shouldn't exist on this poor continent, wrapped in 7 black chains that stank of the outside. 7 evil clansmen, earth grade, bound into the chains as a lock. The Dragon King ate them the way you'd pick lint off a coat, and I stored the flower in my ring, where it pulsed, patient, like it was waiting for a specific person. Feathers, said a smug voice in my head. I told him to either explain or develop a hobby. Then Kalen. The bald spearman had decided the fastest way to farm the ruins was to farm the other visitors, and he'd caught Shui Lan as leverage. I found them in a canyon, her tied in spearlight, him listing his demands to her with the bored efficiency of a toll collector. Your legacy token, your storage ring, and a message to the alchemist you arrived with. Tell him the order of delivery is negotiable. The delivery is not. He's standing behind you, Shui Lan said. I waved. His spear art was real, demon spear golden wheel, an immortal rank technique, spinning wheels of golden edge that chewed the canyon walls into gravel. He was 3-star mid, on paper, my better, and he fought like a man who'd read that paper many times and framed it. Paper has never once survived contact with me. First strike of the sevenfold heaven-breaking ruler to crack his wheels, the ruler came down and his golden geometry shattered like dropped crockery. A Huangquan soul hammer to stagger his mind mid-gasp, and a fire lotus in 23 colors as a closing argument, detonated close enough to make the point without making a corpse. Kalen left the canyon missing his dignity and most of his eyebrows, and I made a note of the way he looked back at me from the ridge. That wasn't defeat in his eyes. That was a boy composing a complaint to a powerful father. Somewhere in there, Long Wei the ape cultivator found my campfire at midnight, sat down uninvited, ate my dinner, and informed me that we would be having a proper battle someday when I was worth the warm-up. Battle maniacs are like cats. You don't choose them, they just start being around. The deep hall was where the ruins stopped being a dungeon and started being a crime scene. A Solomon sect squad had trapped the tomb's apex predator, a bloodthirsty demonic dragon lizard, an imperial rank beast, 7 stars of scaled fury, between double-chained dragon pillars. Their 2 commanding elders, Guo Han and Guo Lei, were losing anyway. The lizard's blood frenzy was shredding their formation link by link. Its dragon breath had already reduced a quarter of their disciples to instructional examples, and Guo Han made a command decision I will remember for the rest of my life. He ate his own people. Not a metaphor. He turned from the beast, spread his hand over his own disciples' formation line, and blood sacrificed them, pulled their lives out through the formation like water through a straw while they screamed his title. Then his own brother. Guo Lei had time to say his name once, disbelief and 20 years of familiarity in one syllable, before he went into the straw with the rest. Guo Han jumped a realm on the spot, 4-star late, robes soaked in his own sect, and killed the lizard with borrowed blood still on his lips. Solomon sect, everyone. Remember the name, it keeps coming back like a stain. He didn't get to enjoy it. Su Fang came out of the wind with a family grudge and a storm's worth of reasons. Her clan and Solomon had unfinished funerals between them, and cornered him against his own dead formation. Guo Han, my family sends greetings. Which family? He asked, and I'll credit him this. Even monsters can be polite when cornered. The one you're about to remember very clearly. Guo Han self-destructed rather than be taken, a 4-star firework of stolen blood, and his soul wisp went slithering for the exit under the smoke, off to report every face it had seen to a sect that files grudges alphabetically. It slithered past me. I closed my hand. Somewhere far away, a Solomon sect leader felt an elder's soul lamp go out and started hating a stranger he'd never met. Worth it. Some enemies you earn, the best ones you inherit by doing the obviously right thing. While the hall argued over the lizard's official corpse, I was already under it, quietly lifting the 2 items everyone forgot to guard. An imperial rank dragon-type magic core, Li Wei's core, the whole reason I'd come, and 7 drops of frenzy blood that hummed in the vial like a wasp nest. You loot like a dragon, my grandfather said with genuine emotion. Highest praise he knows. The tomb's main hall was the actual prize floor, 7 orbs of light holding 7 immortal techniques, a stone coffin, and the emperor's skeleton on a throne, still wearing 10,000 years of attitude. Around 500 surviving prodigies pack the hall, doing the math on 7 prizes and 500 claimants. The stone gate had already thinned the greedy. It opened into a space storm that shredded the first wave of shovers while the patient watched from cover and updated their opinions about patience. Then, 7 guardians woke up along the walls, constructs of the tomb, armored husks running on old orders, 3-star peak each, and announced the door policy in one shared voice: trespassers die. Prove worth or feed the floor. What followed was the region's entire young generation taking their graduation exam in pairs, in public, with the failure grade written on the floor in previous candidates. 7 guardians, 3-star peak each, 500 hopefuls, most of them 2 full stars below that. The math only works if you cooperate, so the hall did something rare and briefly beautiful. Rivals from cities that had been feuding for generations picked partners by strength and got to work. The blind swordsman from Sword King City took his by ear. The construct made no breath and no heartbeat, but armor grinds, and he found the grinding, and he was inside its guard before it finished its second swing. The beast tamer's icebird, Frosty, froze one solid mid-swing, then landed on the frozen arm and preened while its owner apologized to the room for its manners. Wan Li, a quiet girl with frost in her palms, held a guardian in place with a technique that visibly cost her everything, and then lent the last of her power to a stranger's finishing blow, which is the only real definition of a good person I've ever found useful. And Xuelan stunned everyone, including me. Her guardian had her cornered. She was 3-star, tired, and out of tricks, and then she stopped moving, folded her hands, and something behind her eyes changed the room's temperature. Light of the bright moon, she said. One silver flash. It passed through the guardian the way noon passes through a window, and where a 3-star peak construct had been standing, there was suddenly a life lesson and some settling dust. A legacy technique of some ancient bright moon fairy, sitting in the daughter of a mid-sized merchant clan, unused until the exact minute it was needed. Quiet pastry girl, secret moonlight ordinance. Duly noted, and filed under reasons her family guards her so very politely. Me? I didn't fight my way to the throne. I walked. The blonde's fire recognized what slept in my body and parted like an usher, and Ran Feng strolled me straight through the killing formation, hand in my collar, while 500 geniuses watched their entrance exams get skipped by a man and his small flaming brother. The winners collected their orbs, immortal rank techniques handed out to teenagers, one each, the kind of prize that reorganizes a city's power balance for a generation. Long Wei got one and immediately asked whether he could fight the Guardian again for a second. And then the tomb kicked everyone out. A white-robed one, a 5-star plus presence that had been napping above the stone coffin through the entire afternoon, watching 500 children fight for scraps, stood up, flexed once, and every prodigy in that hall got folded out to the exit mid-protest. Su Feng went with a nod at me. The beast girl went mid-sentence, still trying to buy my brother. Everyone except me. The fire in you is welcome, the white-robed one said, and left it at that. And except one other person, revealed when an azure lotus platform drifted down out of the dark above the throne, carrying someone who had been sitting there the whole time, above all of us, waiting for the hall to empty. Her name was Han Fei. She came from the Tianyuan continent, a richer world than this one, and her power was sealed down to 3-star peak, the way you'd seal a cannon to bring it into a duel of slingshots. And on her palm burned a fire I had no category for. Deep azure, silent, cold in a way that made my 22 flames stand at attention like recruits. The 23rd sacred flame, the deep azure myriad cold flame. My first sacred flame, in the hands of a woman looking at me like I'd tracked mud into her tomb. You may leave, she said. I was invited, by the architecture. Then the architecture has poor taste. The emperor's inheritance was built for two, a white bead and a black bead, yin and yang, take one each. She took the white with ceremony. I took the black, plus a scroll I may have also lifted off the throne's spine while she was being solemn professional habit. Thrones are just shelves with better marketing. The inscription on the coffin said the two beads must be balanced together, bearer to bearer, or burn their takers hollow. We read that inscription after we'd absorbed the beads. In our defense, tombs should put warnings at the top. So began the stupidest crisis of my career. Two strangers, cooking from the inside out, one on pure yang, one on pure yin, in a sealed hall with exactly one cure, cooperation. I proposed it in my most diplomatic tone. She heard, a strange man suggests we join energies, turned the color of her flame, and opted instead to attack me, on the theory that killing the yang holder might free the yang. For a sealed cannon, she hit like an unsealed one. The hall lost 2 pillars learning that. Mid-dodge, my forehead betrayed me. The heat, the strain, the yang boiling in my meridians, the Shao clan mark flared. She froze mid-strike like a video someone paused. Then she did something worse than attacking. She bowed. The mark, she said, voice suddenly formal enough to notarize. Show it again, so you can aim, so I can verify. She produced, from a jade case worn against her heart, a replica of the mark on my forehead, a relic, her sect's founding relic. 10,000 years ago, my sect swore guardianship to the Shao clan. Our first commandment, if a clansman ever surfaces, do not fight him. Bring him home, at any cost. She looked physically ill saying it. You are the first in living memory. You seem thrilled. Our records also describe Shao clan men in detail, a pause with centuries of archived complaints in it. Philanderers, debt leavers, charming disasters. I had hoped the line was extinct. Somewhere, generations of my ancestors had earned that face, and I got to wear the bill. The cure ended up being chemistry, the alchemical kind. 1 drop of bloodthirsty lizard blood to catalyze a residual yin-yang mysterious dragon pill left in the tomb's stores, splitting its power into pure yin for me and pluyur yang for her. We sat back to back like 2 feuding neighbors sharing a radiator and absorbed our way out of dying, her muttering sect scripture, me narrating my recovery percentages out loud purely because it annoyed her. I came out 3-star peak. Ran Feng drank the overflow and dropped into an advancement slumber, curling up in my inner world like a cat in a sunbeam, and for one flickering second, as he faded, I saw something old in him, a memory that wasn't his child self, a lotus, a saint. Violence stripped away and locked behind a door with no handle on our side. My little brother came from somewhere, and someday that somewhere would knock. The tomb's master had one scene left. His remnant soul, a courteous, tired man in scholar's robes, led us to the true chamber. Shelves of preserved herbs, his own essence blood suspended in a bell of amber light, and one final exam. Forgive the format, the soul said, and stepped back into his own bones. His skeleton stood up off the throne, filled with ferocious corpse chi, 10,000 years of stored violence in a frame of yellowed ivory, and invited us to earn the inheritance over his dead body, which, he noted with the last of his humor, was the only way he had left to offer it. We fought a dead emperor in his own house. I broke his rhythm with the ruler and salted his corpse chi with fire. He backhanded me through a shelf of herbs older than my civilization, and Han Fei ended it with a move that made my flames flinch. The The frozen throne, her sacred flame's origin power. A cold so absolute it didn't feel like temperature, it felt like a verdict. The skeleton froze mid-swing, a museum exhibit of itself, and the tomb went quiet with respect. The essence blood chose her. Fair. She'd brought the bigger fire. And then we made the deal that's going to hang over the next 100 years of my life. She would not take me home by force. Even she could see the sequence mattered. That a Shao clansman dragged weak into whatever waited would just be a hostage with better paperwork. Instead, a promise. 100 years. If I reached Battle Immortal within a century, I was to burn the lotus leaf token she gave me, and she would come. And she would take me to the thing her sect had guarded from my clan for 10,000 years. And if I can't reach Battle Immortal in 100 years, then you were not worth the secret. She said it the way clerks stamp forms. Statistically, you will fail. The climb from Dodi to Battle Immortal averages 4 centuries. For geniuses. Put money on it. I don't gamble with clan property, she said, and flew off on her lotus with my first sacred flame and all the answers, and her last look said she'd already drafted my failure report. Noted, Swordface. See you in a few decades. Early. Oh, and the skeleton. I kept the skeleton. Because when the hall was empty and the essence blood was gone, my grandfather looked at a frozen Dodi corpse lying on a tomb floor like discarded furniture, and said in the mildest voice he owns, "Take that. It's a corpse. It's a vessel." Then he laid out a checklist, and I stopped breathing somewhere around item 3, a life-shaping blood-building pill, the blood essence of an imperial rank beast, a Dodi skeleton, intact, a preserved soul imprint, and a sacred flame for the furnace. With those 5 things, you can put a man back into the world. Not any man, the one whose soul imprint the Shao clan mark has been carrying on every forehead in my family for 10,000 years. Lin Fan, my clan's greatest dead man. The ancestor whose name gets whispered in the same breath as the fall of everything we used to be. One shopping list away from a second life, and my grandfather had known it from the moment he saw the mark light up in that tomb. Skeleton, acquired, and stored where nobody would think to look. Beast blood, 7 drops in a vial in my ring, lifted off a dragon lizard by a man everyone assumed was looting for coin. The rest of the list was out there on this continent somewhere, wearing armed guards and other people's crowns. 2 items down. I've built empires on worse starting positions. I walked out of those ruins with a fruit for Shui Lan, a core for Li Wei, a flower with no explanation, a corpse with a future, and a century-long bet with a woman who despised me on principle. Decent dungeon, 5 stars, would rob again. Chen Guang was waiting for me in the mountains on the way home, and he'd brought his real face. The fire chariot golden boy had also come out of the ruins at 3-star peak, and he'd decided the rankings needed 1 fewer name. Nothing personal, he opened, which is what people say before doing the most personal thing available. But there's only room for one miracle this generation, and you're standing in my light. Your light rides a chariot and lost to a bald man's spear last spring. That did it. Our duel started as a duel, his triple Rashomon, 3 mirrored demon gates stacking his power gate over gate against my Nirvana-class Fire Lotus, and it was honest work for about 40 breaths. Then I cracked his second gate, and instead of retreating, he smiled, and his blood went black. The gates grew teeth, the mountain air curdled, and I smelled it again, the outside smell, the one from the void tunnel, the one from the corpse demon's meat. Wu City's crown prince had 3 evil veins running under his skin, pulsing like buried worms. A servant of the extraterritorial evil clan, marinating in the middle of human civilization, smiling at parties, kissing babies, waiting. "You smell it," he said, delighted. "Good. Die informed." I was winning anyway. Evil veins by power, not talent, right up until his backup arrived. A black cloak out of a fold in the sky, 4-star peak, with a pressure I recognized from my nightmares about the old war. A Hun clan cloak. The Hun clan. The people I'd erased from my old continent, root and branch and altar. They existed here too, of course they existed here. Roaches are a multiversal constant, and this one had come to collect their new pet before the pet got dented. I survived that meeting for exactly one reason. Feng Lin arrived with the whole weight of his clan behind him, and made the price of my head too high for a pickup errand. The cloak weighed the ledger, gathered Chen Guang like luggage, and left through the same fold it came from. "You collect enemies the way other men collect debts," Feng Lin observed, watching the sky heal. "Faster," I said. "Debts have interest schedules." I did the healing at the UA estate, in a bed, like a mortal, which offended me deeply, and which Shu Lan enforced with the ruthlessness of a woman who had recently watched her father almost die of not resting. They fed me a healing spiritual root, a herb the UA family had been hoarding for 3 generations, which my grandfather identified on site as medicine from one of the 8 ancient clans, the kind of thing that doesn't grow in this region, and never did. And while I was flat on my back, 2 pieces of news arrived. First, my grandfather finally connected the dot he'd been sitting on since the forest. Li Wei's healing touch, the way my chi refilled whenever she brushed my arm, matched the medicine arts of one of those same 8 clans. He said the word quietly, the way you handle glass. Angel. That's a metaphor. That's a family name, boy. Second, back in the mountains, an elder named Zhao Shan, 4-star late, Kalen's father, had found my flame residue on his son's scorched pride and started asking loud, well-funded questions about the alchemist from Qingcheng. Fathers of bullies, the most punctual people alive. And a third thing, quieter than either, which mattered more than both. Xuantian Three Heavens recruitment was opening in a month, and 8 ancient clans, plus a corrupt royal family, plus a Hun clan branch office, had all appeared inside one season of my arrival. This continent wasn't dangerous because it was strong. It was dangerous because every single power on it was already mid-scheme when I walked in. But before all of that came due, I had a promise to keep in a valley with a spring, a cauldron, and 107 ingredients. The foundation cultivation pill took 6 days without sleep. 107 ingredients means 106 chances to ruin a girl's last shot, so I weighed everything twice and my temper once. The blazing flame cauldron, number 18 in the association's registry, rented with my new elder's privileges, held up heroically. The dragon blood ingredient rebelled twice, because dragon anything rebels on principle, thrashing in the melt like it had somewhere better to be. Both times, my grandfather leaned into the cauldron and roared it back into line. 10,000 years of food chain memory in one sound. The second roar also flattened the valley's birds, a tent, and my hair. On day 5, the half-formed pill tried to escape. On day 6, heaven noticed my work and sent profound demon lightning to object. I fed the objection to my puppet. The golden demon puppet stood in the strike zone with its arms open like a man greeting rain, drank a second divine punishment to the dregs, and came out closer to 4-star, gleaming smugly. If pills keep making the sky angry, I'm going to accidentally build the strongest bodyguard on the continent out of confiscated weather. Li Wei swallowed the pill at the spring's edge, both hands around mine, eyes shut tight. Will it hurt? For a moment. Then it'll be spring inside you for the rest of your life. The sickness that had been strangling her since birth burned off like fog. Then the fog turned out to be the disguise. Her power didn't stabilize, it erupted. Past awakening, past every rank I'd planned for, a pillar of white light punching from the spring into the clouds, visible, I'd guess, from 3 cities. Her aura climbed while I watched, Do Sheng tears flickering past like fence posts from a carriage window. All the strength her broken foundation had been quietly imprisoning her whole life, released at once. And out of her back, wings. Actual wings, white as the first page of a book, spreading over the valley while she hung in the air, looking down at me with an expression that asked whether this was also part of the pill. "Big brother," she called down, voice shaking. "What's happening to me?" "Nothing's happening to you," I called back. "You're happening." Everything else was the interruption. My little sister was an angel. An actual daughter of the Angel Clan, the Healers of Legends, one of the 8 ancient clans that had crossed to this continent in the old ages, hidden in a servant girl's body her whole starving childhood, sick precisely because a mortal frame can't hold divine blood without cracking. And then the 7-colored healing flame flower rose out of my ring on its own, the treasure from under the poison lake, the one that had pulsed patiently for weeks, waiting for a specific person, drifted up through the white light, and bloomed at the touch of her blood. Her white wings drank the 7 colors and turned purple, deep as dusk. "Purple wings," the Dragon King said, and for once there was no smugness in it. "Archangel line, divine messenger rank, the ones whose art can raise the dead. Boy, the stray you fed is holy." The flower had known before any of us. Feathers. He'd smelled it on day 1 and said, "Go save her," and I will never hear the end of it, and for once, he's earned every repetition. We got one evening of joy. The girl flew laps around the valley until moonrise, laughing, tireless for the first time in her life. The next day the sky tore open, and a blue-clad woman with wings of her own descended with a 3-winged unicorn at her shoulder and the bearing of someone repossessing property. "The daughter of the clan returns home," the woman announced, not to Li Wei, to the air, formally, like reading a verdict. "The daughter of the clan," I said, "has a say. She has a birthright, 16 years of it, stolen by whatever accident dropped her here. Her power needs her people's guidance, or it will burn her. You of all men can see that." And I could. That was the poisonous part. Every argument I had died against the simple fact that they were right, and also 5-star peak. Li Wei didn't fight it either. She looked at the woman, looked at her own impossible wings, and understood the same math. Then she flew down, hugged me hard enough to bruise a dodi, and pressed one purple feather into my hand, warm as a heartbeat. "Big brother, come find me when you're strong enough that they can't say no." "Count the days," I said into her hair. "I'll be early." The unicorn snorted at me on the way out, the specific snort of a superior beast filing me under livestock. That I did fight. I'd been quietly fusing the origin powers of my 22 flames into a single new thing for weeks, and grief wanted a test target. The fusion ignited for the first time above that valley, the Nirvana Lotus, 22 fires speaking as one voice, a mushroom cloud with a flower's name, and the smug horse left the sky at triple speed with its tail on fire and its opinion of me thoroughly revised. The valley was very quiet after they were gone. New technique, functional. Little sister, gone. The feather went into my ring next to the soul jades, and the pile of people I owed a rescue got heavier by one. And Zhao Shan? Zhao Shan came for me that same week, with Kalen smirking one-armed at his shoulder and a Wu City order arrest warrant naming me for crimes against Chen Guang. Flame residue from the ruins as evidence, testimony purchased by the bail. 3 elders, a gray triangle seal that folded space into a cage, a whole procession assembled to drag the upstart alchemist to Wu City justice. This warrant is fiction, Feng Lin said, planting himself in front of me with his whole clan's chi rising. It's fine, I said, stepping around him. It is not fine. Wu City's dungeon has eaten better men than Uncle Yue. I patted his shoulder. Let them have me. I insist. I let them take me. Politely, cooperatively, in chains, wrists out, with the serene face of a man boarding a carriage he ordered. Well, I let them take my soul clone in chains. The original me was in a guest room at the Yue estate eating grapes and monitoring the feed. Here's what the Wu City dungeon held that week. My clone, sitting quietly in their deepest cell, wrapped in 6 layers of suppression seals, with a bouquet of sealed fire lotus seeds folded inside his chest, primed, patient. They interrogated him about the scroll. He gave them riddles. They cut him. He bled convincingly and asked for better food. Chen Guang came down personally to gloat, veins tucked away, princely smile restored. The genius of Qing Cheng. Do you know what we're going to make of you? The deacon says your soul alone is worth a decade of harvests. High praise, said my clone. What's your soul worth? More than yours. We'll compare notes shortly. The Hun clan's soul deacon came to inspect the merchandise and pronounced it exquisite. 2/3 of Wu City's elite gathered in the fortress above the dungeon for the celebration banquet, the season's most dangerous stray, caged in their basement, a bright future divided into shares over wine. At the height of the toasts, my clone smiled at Chen Guang and let go. The explosion gutted Wu City from the cellar up. Fire lotus seeds, sealed and stacked and detonated inside a suppression cell that had been specifically designed to hold a Dodi's power in, which meant it held my Dodi's power in for exactly as long as it took to reach critical, and then vented all of it straight up through the fortress above. Chen Guang died with 3 evil veins and no last words. Kalen lost his remaining arms use hauling his father out of the collapse. The city lord and the Mu patriarch crawled out broken in front of their own people. 2/3 of Wu City's elite ended their careers in the time it takes to say the word banquet. Out of that whole rotten crowd, exactly one thing slipped the blast. The Hun clan's soul deacon, rising out of the smoke with Chen Guang's escaped soul wisp cupped in both hands, hissing a promise to it about rebirth and about the souls he'd need to harvest to pay for it. That's how the Hun clan works. They farm worship. Power of faith, gathered off populations that don't know their livestock, converted into strength for the family at the top. I bankrupted that operation once already on my old continent, root and altar, and here they were with a regional branch office, an investment in a dead prince, and now a very specific grudge. You, the deacon said to the smoke, to nobody, to a man he thought was ash in a cell. Whoever you were, the Wu City lord, from under his own rubble, swore vengeance for his son. Good, let them all write it down. Everyone else on this continent already had. That night I sat with the soul jade and checked my scattered people, the way I did every night since the tunnel. 4 threads on one palm-sized piece of jade, laid there by 4 people in the last quiet minute before we jumped. Mei Hua's, steady, far. Kai Long's steady, far, and slightly annoyed, which is his resting state. Wei Zhen's steady. Linger's steady and troubled. That's all a soul jade gives you, not words, not location, just the temperature of someone's attention. And hers had the specific texture of a woman being extremely polite in a room she doesn't trust. Later I'd learned the shape of it. She and her father had been taken in by an ancient clan on 7 beautiful peaks called the Immortal Creating Mountains. And the clan had been generous, very generous, extraordinarily interested in her golden emperor sky-burning flame, and in exactly how much of it she'd inherited, and from whom. She wasn't in danger that night. She was in the other thing, the kind of hospitality that checks your teeth while it compliments your smile. Hold on, both of you, I'm coming up the rankings as fast as this continent will let me, and when I get there, I'm going to be very rude to some hosts. Losing a soul clone hurts. The backlash put me in bed for a day with a headache shaped like a fortress, so I built the loss into the toolkit. The Dragon King taught me a proper immortal rank clone technique, expendable decoys, cheap to make, convincing enough to die for me without billing my soul for the funeral. My first attempt produced a clone that was, and I quote, nobody because no one dared say it aloud, fat. Identical face, 40% more clone. It stood there, radiating my exact confidence from a substantially larger address. Behold, my grandfather said, the Yan Emperor after a good harvest. He laughed so hard his soul flickered. Attempt 2 came out regulation size, and I burned the first one before it could enter historical records, though I suspect the Dragon King keeps a memory of it filed for emergencies. The Ruin Scroll, the one I'd lifted off the Emperor's throne, finally opened for me that week, and it wasn't a technique, it was a profession. An ethereal figure rose out of the pages, ancient beyond the tomb itself, robes from no dynasty I could name. He looked me over the way examiners look at the last candidate of a long day, sighed, and reached through my forehead. No pain, just a door opening in a room I didn't know my skull had, the Niwan Palace. And inside it, he lit a lamp, mental energy. Not soul power, its estranged sibling. Soul power feels the world. Mental energy commands it. You have the aptitude, the Phantom said. That is not a compliment. Aptitude is a debt. He pressed a quarter of a rune into the lamp, a natal rune called Divine Movement, 1/4 of a hole, origin unexplained, terms and conditions apply, set me my first exercise, and watched me condense core inscriptions. The exercise target for a talented beginner, by his ancient records, was 50 strands. The prodigies of his era managed 50. I produced 100. Battle Formation Master. The rarest of the 4 side professions, rarer than alchemists the way lightning is rarer than rain, a class of warrior that doesn't fight armies so much as file them into containers. The phantom faded out looking pleased and slightly worried, which is exactly how everyone who teaches me ends up looking. Then the letter arrived that changed the scale of everything. An invitation to the Xuantian Three Heavens, the sect heartland of this continent's north. 9 mountains and 1 city, where the imperial energy runs thick enough to shorten a cultivator's road by decades, for the joint selection of the 9 great supersects, the big leagues. 9 cities of the region, each sending their handful, 1 boat, 1 month, 1 chance. The Dragon King's advice was uncharacteristically specific, and he gave it before I'd finished reading the invitation. Of the 9, take the incense-burning pavilion. Not the royal family, whatever they promise you. Not Solomon under any circumstance. Why the pavilion? Because a sacred flame called Yan Yu has history with that mountain, and with me. He let that hang a moment, which is how he charges for information. And because Solomon smells of the Hun clan, and the royal family smells of something worse. He also gave me the map of everything above us, and I'll pass it on the way he handed it to me, once, without repetitions. 7 realms: human, ghost, demon, Yao, Buddha, hell, heaven. Each one a bundle of countless planes, each plane sorted into lower, middle, and upper. My old world was a middle plane of the human realm. This continent is an upper one, 4 times its size, and every realm in that structure is still carrying scar tissue from the war against the outside 10,000 years ago. The war where the 7 realms stopped their own infighting for the first and only time, through the extraterritorial evil clan back at a cost nobody has ever fully published, and lost most of their greatest names doing it. And then there was the detail he hadn't planned to share, which I caught off his own dragon mark when it flickered one night. Somewhere in the human realm's high offices, an alarm was ringing. A vice-realm master had issued a hunt order. The reason was 1 sentence long. Someone of the Shao clan had escaped a place called the Immortal Cage. The realm masters keep a cage. My family is in it. Someone got out, and the people at the top of the human realm, the ones who are supposed to be the good side of that ancient war, are hunting them for it. Every instinct I own started counting. The ferry to the Xuantian Three Heavens carried 9 cities worth of chosen prodigies and 1 5-star escort named Shangli, and the ride was a floating seminar in sect politics. 10,000 Swords Sect, ranked first, so arrogant they don't recruit so much as permit. Purgatory Hall, the demon hunters, who take you apart and rebuild you facing the enemy. Wanhua Pavilion, the Garden of Geniuses, all flowers and baptisms and lethal etiquette. Pill Valley, where alchemists go to become currency. And Solomon, mentioned in the same hushed tone every single time, by 9 cities worth of unrelated young people, none of whom could name one good deed the sect had ever done. 8 days of that, on a boat, while I sat in the back working on my second ruler strike and pretending not to listen. Best intelligence briefing I've ever attended. We docked at Red Mountain, the intake outpost run by the Red Valley sect, hosted by their master, Ru Yan, a graceful woman with a smile like lacquer, who greeted each arriving genius by name and never once blinked on schedule, and a small child at her side who watched the newcomers the way cats watch birds. First fact on arrival, passed around the bunkhouses in whispers. 61 newcomers from earlier ferries had already gone missing. The garrison commander, Bao Jun, a 6-star wall of professional exhaustion, called it bandits. 61 hand-picked geniuses. Bandits. Sure. And my tent has more holes than my life plan. Talent testing came first, in a plaza built to humiliate. The crystal gauge ranked your soul from level 1 to level 10. Your number went up on a public board, and your treatment for the rest of your career quietly calibrated itself to it. The line moved through 6s and 7s. An 8 drew applause. The century's best anywhere had touched 9. I put my hand on the crystal. My divine movement rune twitched with competitive spirit before I could stop it, and the gauge went to 10 and tried to keep going, glowing like it wanted to file a complaint about its own scale. Full soul, level 10, 6th time in recorded history, and the recorder checked the archives twice, out loud, in front of everyone, which did wonders for my anonymity. They named me Rookie King on the spot and pinned 200 starting points on me, which mostly translated to, "Congratulations, every ambitious stranger in this camp now wants your head for the leaderboard, and they know exactly where you sleep." The best thing I found at Red Mountain wasn't on the leaderboard. He was in a ragged Taoist robe 2 sizes too old for him, haggling a talisman vendor into poverty. Jinwei, a scruffy ghost hunter my age who fought with a wooden sword and a yin-yang bagua art. "You're the level 10, he said by way of hello. "Do you attract disasters, or do you find them yourself? Both channels stay busy." "Excellent. Stand near me. My master says the fastest way to fortune is proximity to interesting catastrophes." He also smelled very faintly of the grave, in a way he seemed entirely unaware of, which in a ghost hunter is either credentials or a diagnosis. We got along wrong in the first 10 sentences. You know how you meet someone and instantly understand that trouble will be more fun now. That. I also went shopping, because a new continent means a new shopping list. Spirit purple rock, a 3-flame flower. Individually, herbalist's curiosities. Together with 2 more items I hadn't found yet, the ingredient list for something no alchemist on this continent had attempted in living memory, preparing a body to devour a sacred flame. A man can dream, and a man can prep, and a man can quietly buy the components one town at a time so nobody assembles the picture. The shop's young master, one Joe High, decided the outsider needed a lesson in local pricing and started bidding against me on a soul-warming stone with his father's money and his own personality. 200,000, he announced. Some of us can afford to appreciate quality. 3. 500,000. 8. I turned to the shopkeeper, and I'll take the appraisal contract on his last 3 purchases. Free. Consider it a courtesy between professionals. The shopkeeper's face did arithmetic. Joe High's face did panic. A rank 1 emperor alchemist offering to audit a rich boy's collection in public is not a courtesy. It's a scheduled humiliation with a date attached. He bought the stone at $1 million and change to make me stop talking, then discovered, because the shopkeeper mentioned it loudly while counting, that the stone he'd overpaid for was the one I'd already had set aside, and the one still on the counter was better. So he bought that too. I left with the stone, $1 million of his family's gold, and the shopkeeper's undying affection. Alchemy isn't just pills, it's negotiation with extra steps. Shuilan found me that evening on the outpost wall, 3 days into an insomnia she was pretending was excitement. It's getting louder, she said, looking at the moon like it owed her an explanation. The legacy. My whole family thinks I won a prize. It doesn't feel like a prize. It feels like a summons. That's because it is one. Inheritances don't ask, they schedule. Have you ever refused one? Twice. Both times it just waited for me somewhere less convenient. She laughed, then went quiet, then held out her little finger like a child. Then when it's time, years from now, whenever I actually reach 5 stars, wherever that ceremony is, come stand beside me for it. I don't want to walk in alone. Promise. No takebacks, even in 100 years. I hooked her finger with mine. 100 years, no takebacks. I'm apparently collecting century-long promises from dangerous women. It's becoming a genre. 2 nights later, somebody kidnapped me, and I let them. The incense came under my door around the 3rd watch, a sweet gray smoke meant to drop a doe D into dreamless sleep. My flames ate it like candy floss, and I lay there breathing theatrically while a sack came down over my head. Then a tunnel. Then a long drag ride down into the dark below Red Mountain, listening to my captors complain about quotas and learning where the missing 61 had gone. Jin Wei, who'd been sniffing that grave smell around the camp for days, followed the same tunnel down by choice and caught up with me around the point where my kidnappers stopped talking. What waited at the bottom was a cold pool, an underground shrine, black water in a circular basin, ringed by things that were mostly ghost and slightly shaped like men, and a queue. A queue of unconscious young geniuses, laid out on stone in orderly rows, being lowered into the water one at a time. They didn't drown. They dissolved. Melted quietly into the pool like sugar into tea, while the water thickened and something at the bottom of the basin pulsed brighter with each one. 96 lives, by the marks on the wall. 96 hand-picked prodigies who had passed talent tests and hugged their families goodbye, kept as fuel to unseal whatever slept under that shrine. We got one whole one out. One. A boy named Chin Bo, still breathing, hauled up over Jin Wei's shoulder while I burned a corridor through the ghost things behind us. And on our way out, I saw the exit's guard standing calmly in the dark with a paper lantern. The small child from Ru Yan's side, watching us run past, making no attempt to stop us and no attempt to help. Children don't guard doors alone. Handlers post them there. We reported to Bao Jun, and we were too late by hours. The 96 hit critical mass that same night, the seal cracked, and half of something climbed out of that pool, half of a thing the ghost things called the Twin Ghost Emperor, a gray wrongness that made the mountain stone sweat. Bao Jun and Zhongli fought it to a standstill and paid for the standstill in blood. It withdrew into the deep rather than finish them, which told me it had somewhere better to be growing. And in the middle of the panic, I watched Ru Yan, gracious hostess, stand exactly where a collaborator stands, close enough to look concerned, far enough to do nothing. 6-star strength, unused, while her guests were being counted as casualties. I learned her reason later, and it was the oldest reason there is. In her private chambers, on a bed of preserving frost, lay a mummified man named Mei Wen. Her lover, dead however long ago, kept like a pressed flower. Somewhere along the way, something dead had offered her a bargain, and she'd been paying the installments in other people's children. I've killed men for less. I've also spared men for less. Grief is not an excuse. It's just the most common motive. The selection went ahead anyway, because sects are institutions, and institutions bury bodies under paperwork. Final rankings before the main event. Shuilan revealed as an actual legacy holder, 2nd overall. Jin Wei 3rd, to his own visible shock and the talisman vendor's bitter regret. Me first, confirmed the fun way, when a 4-star hopeful named Blake decided the whole camp needed to see the Rookie King exposed. Level 10 soul, he said, cracking his knuckles for the crowd. Let's see it survive contact. My Huangquan soul strike ended the discussion in one move, no touching, no marks. He was awake the whole time. That's the part people find upsetting. Then they announced the format, and the map of my future lit up like an altar. 1 month, 1 haunted forest, the Yin Corpse Forest. Points for kills, points for survival, everyone against everyone. Top 100 join the 9 sects. And the top 10 get 2 prizes, a Dodi pill, the kind that force feeds you a whole realm, and entry to the royal pool of the Xuanling royal family. The Dragon King went very quiet in my ring, and then said the thing that reorganized my entire month. The royal pool, that's where Yan Yu sleeps. Little one, there is a sacred flame at the bottom of that prize list. A silver moon heavenly wolf howled somewhere in the mountains that night, long and strange, like a warning I hadn't earned yet. Top 10 then, let's go be arrogant about it. The Yin Corpse Forest earned its name in the first hour. Gray trees with bark like scar tissue, gray light with no sun behind it, and a fog that whispered in the voices of people you missed. Mine whispered in lingers. I walked through it without turning my head, which is the only defense that works. My team was me, Shuilan, and Jin Wei walked into that haunted murder woods the way other men walk into their childhood home. Smell that? He said happily, arms spread. Ghost chi, premium grade, my master would weep. People die in here, Shuilan said. People die everywhere. Here they stay chatty about it. He patted a tree affectionately. The tree groaned. The boy was raised wrong, and I treasure him. Our first real find was a wolf cave lined with illusions, where a werewolf ghost had been farming lost contestants. The illusions showed you the way out, and the way out was its mouth. Shuilan walked straight at a wall of open sky that wasn't there. I caught her collar half a step before the wall ate her. Then I burned the thing down to the concept of a wolf and made the discovery that quietly reshaped my whole career. Ghost chi, refined through my flame, feeds mental energy, not battle chi, not soul power. The lamp in my Niwan palace, the battle formation master's furnace, drank that dead wolf's residue and brightened like a fed animal. My core inscriptions climbed. In a forest where the fog itself was made of ghost chi and every hollow held something dead and hungry. Every monster in these woods had just become a snack with experience points, and I was the only competitor here who could digest them. At the back of the cave, behind the illusions, sat a sealed chamber with a coffin and 2 fangs the length of oars. I did the natural thing, which is always the wrong thing, and touched. The chamber ate us. I came to alone inside a secret realm, a pocket world with its own sky, its own dead stars, its own smell of old ash, face to face with the previous owner. A dragon soul. A fire dragon named Ao Guang, 1,000 years dead, and every year of it angry, coiled around a broken immortal sword like a widow around a grave. Another one, he said, and his voice moved the pocket sky. Another human with an errand. Do you know how many of you I've eaten in here? Do you know how many dragons I've negotiated with this month? His story came out of him in pieces, and none of the pieces were kind. 3 battle immortals had come for him once, back when he still had a body. Not to kill him, which he could have forgiven, but to use him. A forging project. A sword that needed a living dragon's fire woven into it as a spirit. They hunted him for years for the crime of being suitable. He'd escaped by shedding his body and hiding here, and he'd spent 1,000 years coiled around the half-finished sword that had been meant to be his coffin, hating on a fixed schedule. He attacked before introductions were finished. I don't blame him, I do outperform him. Soul power he could match, 1,000 years of concentration makes a dense ghost, but the divine movement rune and my mental energy hit him from an angle dragons don't have armor on. Formations aren't force, they're geography, and I was the one drawing the map. When he was pinned, panting, spilling embers out of a soul with no lungs, I made my offer instead of a killing blow. Don't die in a hole 1,000 years after you were already murdered. Become the ruler spirit of my heavenly flame ancient ruler. You get a home that walks. I get a weapon that thinks. My fire feeds you, your fire feeds me, and my future is the gamble, mine's going somewhere loud. And if you die in a ditch next year, then you'll have lost 1 year instead of another 1,000. He took too long deliberating, so my grandfather cleared his throat. 1 dragon roar, that's all it took. Ao Guang went from cornered predator to full kowtow in under a second. Forehead to the ash, tail flat, every ember in him standing at attention, because the aura filling that pocket world belonged to the Golden Dragon King. Firstborn of the dragon god's 9 sons, the name every dragon on every plane is raised on, the way children are raised on the names of mountains. Ancestor, Ao Guang said into the dirt. Forgive me, I did not sense. You weren't meant to. My grandfather looked him over the way generals look at recruits with promising scars. Your bloodline is thin and your century count is embarrassing. But you kept your fire through 1,000 years of being hunted for it, which is more than some of my brothers managed. Now, about the boy's offer. Ao Guang looked at me, the kid this legend had chosen to haunt, recalculated his entire future in real time, and moved into my ruler that day with the enthusiasm of a man buying stock early on the founder's private tip. For the record, he told me, settling into the metal, I'm not following you, I'm following the odds. Everyone says that at first. My weapon had a soul now, and immediately developed opinions, appetites, and a rivalry with every other item in my ring. That's a whole separate genre of problem, and it arrived on schedule. The Dragon King spent our stay in the realm inhaling 1,000 years of settled dragon chi like a man at a buffet after a famine. By the time we left, he admitted, with the terrifying casualness of a creature who considers modesty a mortal habit, that nothing below the battle immortal level could threaten him anymore. And the coffin? The coffin held the real treasure, a seed of dark brown fire small as a plum stone that rose out of the stone the moment I lifted the lid and dove into my soul sea before I could get a hand up. Do not resist it, my grandfather said sharply. It isn't attacking. It's arriving. A soul seed of the sacred flame called Cinderwing. A sacred flame's detached seed, which, he explained, in the quietest voice I'd yet heard from him, means one thing. A sacred flame does not shed pieces of itself for fun. It does it when it is controlled, or dying, and wants something of itself to survive in a direction its captor can't reach. Somewhere out there, one of the 36 was in chains, and it had mailed a piece of itself into the future. You knew it, I said. That flame. You said its name like a name. I had a pact with Cinderwing, he said, and closed the subject like a door. The seed settled into my soul sea, curled up beside my 22 flames, and waited. It would be a long time before I learned what it was waiting for. Outside, the month was burning, and the leaderboard had become a war map, updated live on a jade board back at the outpost for the whole continent's sex scouts to admire. Number 1. A girl named Liu Mei, 4-star peak, azure flames, riding a 5-star heavenly fire Saint Tiger, trouncing everything in her path with the cheerful brutality of someone raised very far from consequences. She'd caught the Zhao brothers, 2 mid-board bullies who'd been farming weaker teams all week and left them a public lesson in why you check a girl's tiger before you check her rank. Number 10 was 25,000 points away from me, and I was behind schedule, so we hunted smart, which in a points war means hunting the tired. The Zhao brothers limped out of their beating from Liu Mei and straight into us on a ridge 2 valleys over, which is the forest's way of teaching humility twice in one day. Out of the way, Zhao Qi said, still bleeding, still certain. You have no idea whose points you're standing in front of. 14,000, give or take, I said, most of them off teams that couldn't fight back. I checked the board. He came anyway, because men like that only have the one gear. Zhao Ming had a whole second to reconsider, looked at his brother, and chose loyalty, which was genuinely noble and cost him his place in the competition about 9 seconds later. Their points moved into my column. One of the brothers moved wherever bodies move in a forest that composts them. Don't mourn them. I'd read their kill list on the jade board, and half of it was people who never got a duel, just an ambush. The food chain is a wheel, and they'd enjoyed the top of it right up until the rotation. Shui Lan looked away when it finished. Jin Wei didn't. He'd been hunting ghosts since he was 10, and ghosts are what happens when someone stands where the Zhao brothers had been standing all week. We climbed. 25,000 points is a lot of ghosts, and it turned out ghosts were the cheapest currency in that forest for a man whose skull ate them. Jin Wei got rich the same way. His yin-yang bagua arts had the same appetite mine did, and his strength was climbing at a rate that had my grandfather squinting at him from inside my ring. That boy absorbs, he said. Not the way you do. Similar family of trick. Should I worry? You should recruit. Then Al Guang made his first payment on our partnership, and it was a big one. My origin flame, he said. The blazing blood flame. Take it. That's not a loan. That's a piece of you. It's the piece that's been rotting in a hole for 1,000 years. A pause, and then the real terms, because dragons always have real terms. One favor. Later. Your other profession, not this one. There's a rebirth I want brewed someday. Done. So I burned through the fusion the way I'd done 22 times before, and the 23rd fire went into the choir. 23 flames. The true flame mantra shuddered up out of the mortal grades entirely and settled at the bottom of the immortal rank, and my whole body hit a ceiling and went through it, which would have been a lovely quiet moment if a spear axe man named Zhou Lei, ranked 11th, hadn't picked exactly that instant to challenge me for my slot. He attacked a 3-star Do D. 12 seconds later, he was fighting a 4-star with 23 flames in his bloodstream and a Nirvana lotus opening overhead like the Day of Judgment renting a room. He self-destructed his own axe just to buy the ejection instead of the funeral, which I respect and which cost him a weapon his family had probably named. Was that necessary? Zhulan asked, watching the crater cool. He picked the moment. I just showed up to it. Points? Enough. Rank? Climbing. And that was when the forest landlord invited me to dinner. The Silver Moon Heavenly Wolf found me at dusk on the forest's 3rd level. Not a beast, or not only one. A silver-haired man with wolf's eyes and impossible manners, sitting beside a fire he'd built for 2, with wine he'd apparently brought for the occasion. You're the one refining our ghost chi, he said. I felt the woods get thinner. Sit. He called himself Shadowfang, guardian of this forest, master of a teleportation art that treated space as a suggestion. He demonstrated by refilling my cup from 4 meters away without moving the bottle through the intervening air. He knew my grandfather's aura on the first sniff and started treating me like the nephew of an old war buddy, which, increasingly, is exactly what I am to this entire continent. Your ancestor and my line have history, good history, which is rare. He tapped his cup against mine. So let me be useful. The yin month comes in 11 days, the forest's dark tide. When it rises, every seal in these woods loosens, including the one on the ghost-suppressing well, where the greatest treasure in this forest has been sitting since before your family was hunted. And the well's guardian? Is my problem for exactly as long as you need. I'll keep him occupied. You take what's inside. He let that sit, then added the price because everyone here has one. In exchange, one job, later, from your other profession. I have a friend, a Silver Azure Thunderwolf King, dead a long time, with a rebirth in him if the right alchemist ever cares to try. Long horizon, my choice of date. You realize you're asking a favor of a man who might die next week. You realize I'm a wolf, he said. We only bet on things that run well. Everything in this world, I was learning, wants to either recruit me or eat me. The classy ones bring wine first. While I shopped for treasure, the forest's villains held a merger meeting. The thing from the cold pool, the freed half of the twin ghost emperor, had a rival, and the rival was the interesting one. A ghost spirit called Ashbane, who was not in fact a ghost at all. He was a man, or had been. An orphan of a village called Daoshang, burned to its foundations when he was small enough to hide under a floor and listen. He'd come out of that floor and made one decision, and every decision since had been the same decision, with more corpses in it. Hollow yourself out, devour the dead, become whatever kills the killers. By the time this forest met him, he was more appetite than person, and he just swallowed the weaker half of the twin ghost emperor whole. Not a fight, a hostile takeover, a smaller monster used as capital. Ru Yan assisted him, still shopping for her mummified lover's resurrection, still telling herself the arithmetic came out even. And Kalen, one-armed, father-avenging, spear-broken Kalen, had resurfaced holding a ghost emperor's decree, an artifact that let a mediocre human command actual ghost legions. Nothing in this world is fairer than watching a bully get promoted into a middle management villain. Their plan had the elegant simplicity of all terrible plans. Capture every contestant in the forest. Not kill, capture. 100-odd hand-picked geniuses in one place, alive and screaming, to be fed into the Ghost Emperor's completion the way the cold pool had been fed with 61. My plan was to rob the well before they could cash it. The ghost-suppressing well sat in the forest's oldest hollow, ringed by stones so old the carvings had gone smooth, and it paid out immediately. 17 bottles of blood spirit ice liquid, drawn from a vein of frozen red water with my own hands, which came away numb to the elbow. The second of the 3 treasures on my someday devour a sacred flame list, checked off in a haunted forest by candlelight, while a wolf kept the guards busy above me. The liquid's nascent vengeful spirit objected to being bottled. It formed a face in the frost, screamed something older than the language it was screaming in, and learned what 23 flames feel like from the inside. Briefly, Jinwei's Tai Chi Bagua cracked the seal gate below the well, an hour of chanting, both his palms bleeding onto the stone, and past that crack, the well stopped being a treasure vault and became a door. A forbidden water bridge stretched out over black nothing, and the pressure coming off it wasn't physical, it was mental, pure crushing weight aimed at the mind, the kind that had liquefied visitors far stronger than me. Jinwei got 3 steps on and started bleeding from the ears, and I sent him back. Then I walked it alone, and the bridge made a mistake. My divine movement rune drank that pressure the way it had drunk the werewolf, the way it drank everything mental in this forest. I crossed, getting stronger with every step, the Nuan Palace stretching like a lung taking its first real breath, core inscriptions climbing, 3,000 strands, 4, 5, 5,500 by the far bank. Somewhere on that bridge, I stopped being a novice battle formation master and became a real one. The dead art's central promise stopped being theory and became a fact I could feel. Inside my own formation, I am not a man fighting. I am the terrain, and terrain does not lose. On the far side stood a man in gray who introduced himself as the Stone Warden. That is a title, not a name, he said. The name went into the steely with the rest of me. One of 9 human guardians who had sealed themselves inside their own suppression steelies walked into their own technique and pulled the door shut, standing watch over this well for lifetimes. He tasted my flame, recognized my grandfather's aura on me, and decided in about 4 seconds that I was allowed to see the thing he'd been guarding. A woman in white, sitting in the dark, sharing her body with the other half of the twin ghost emperor. She'd been the seal. Not a victim of it, the mechanism itself. A living host, holding half a monster folded inside her own soul. For years, on purpose, because someone had to, and she'd volunteered back when volunteering still felt like a story with an ending. She was done. I could see it before she said anything. Her heart had quietly died somewhere between duty and abandonment, and the thing inside her had been patiently waiting for exactly that hour. Soul gone, heart dead, ghost emperor born. That's the old formula, and no seal in the world holds when the jailer stops wanting to be one. You can't stop it, she told me, almost kindly. Don't waste your fire trying. Do something else for me instead. Name it. There was a man, Wei Ming. She said the name carefully, like a bowl she didn't want to chip. If you ever meet him, tell him I waited as long as I could. Not longer, just as long as I could. Then the stele shattered. A jade tablet rose out of the wreck, the true treasure under the texture, the thing the well had actually been built around, and above us, right on the villain's schedule, the yin month arrived under a gray moon. The jade tablet tested me first. Soul power alone bounced off it. Mental energy alone bounced off it. Both at once, braided together, the one trick that only an alchemist formation master hybrid could even attempt, the accident of my two professions colliding, and the tablet opened like a hand and pressed its gift into my left palm, where it burrowed under the skin and became part of me. The soul-devouring talisman. 10th of the 12 evil weapons of the ghost realm. The natural predator of every soul-bodied thing that exists, once carried by one of the 4 strongest beings that realm ever produced, currently living in my hand like a parasite with an impressive resume. At my level, it could devour any soul up to 6 stars whole. That thing corrupts its wielders, the Stone Warden said, watching black lines settle into my palm lines. Every one of them, without exception. It'll have to get in line behind 23 flames and a dragon. He checked, actually checked, with a probe of his own power, and grunted when he found the talisman's hunger already pressed flat under my fire like a dog under a heavier dog. Not neutralized, outranked. I want to be honest about the moment I felt it settle in. No dread, just the specific joy of a man who has been handed the exact wrong thing for his enemies in the exact hour they arrive. Because the enemy was up. The twin ghost emperor, Dreadfang, wearing the woman in white like a coat, her last kindness dissolved into him, rose out of the well into the gray moonlight, and the forest's entire dark tide rose with him. The battle for the Yin Corpse Forest ran all night, and the roster kept growing on both sides. The Stone Warden, freshly unsealed after lifetimes in stone, fighting at 7 stars with a body that hadn't stretched in a century. Shadowfang, keeping his dinner promise with fangs the length of my forearm, and Lin Dong, a deputy master of the incense-burning pavilion, 7-star peak, arriving out of the north because 100 sect recruits were about to become ingredients and someone senior had finally read the report. Against them, a ghost emperor drinking an entire forest's worth of ghost chi through the air itself, climbing rank by visible rank while we watched, half-step to the 8th star and rising like a tide chart. And then he found the ugliest power-up on the field. Liu Mei, leaderboard queen, Azure Flames, the girl who'd been beating this forest like a rug for a month, wore a silver hair ornament. Small, old, not a weapon. It hummed when Dreadfang came near, and something inside the Ghost Emperor answered it. Every Ghost Emperor is built around a stolen heart, and every stolen heart keeps one obsession, the last human thing in it, the thing it wouldn't let go of on the way down. Whatever Dreadfang's heart had loved, it recognized that ornament. Familiar warmth, he crooned, in a voice with a woman's grief underneath it, and then he ate the obsession. Devoured the last human piece of himself for the fuel, because a monster's final upgrade always comes from spending the part that could still have been saved. The half-step vanished from his rank, a full 8th star ghost emperor, in a forest full of teenagers. With the exits locked, he'd sealed the space himself the moment he stabilized. Nothing short of a battle immortal was leaving without his permission. Then he cast the Death Fear Vortex, a whirlpool of blood-colored hunger the width of a valley, and ate his own army, every ghost in the forest. His loyal tide, the things that had knelt to him an hour earlier, the Red Valley collaborators who'd bled their guests dry for his sake, Ru Yan's own people, all of it, pulled screaming into the vortex as fuel while she stood at the edge with her lover's corpse in her arms, watching her entire bargain get converted into somebody else's power. Villain lesson number 1, kids. Your Dark Lord's retirement plan is you. Here's what we had. A rescue team cutting 100 caged contestants out of ghost webbing on the forest's edge. A handful of 7 stars holding the line and losing slowly in the honest way, where you can watch how many minutes are left. And me, 4 stars, a lotus, and a parasite in my palm. So we built the trap around exactly that math. I forged the finest nirvana lotus of my life on my knees in the ash, layering fire, soul power, and mental energy through the petals like a man packing a shell, and buried the soul-devouring talisman's black hunger in the core, under everything, wrapped in 3 grades of ordinary destruction, so that even an emperor's caution would read the surface and stop reading. Then the Stone Warden and Lin Dong put their palms on my back and poured battle chi into me until my meridians howled. A 4-star body running 7-star peak current, a firework wearing my face. This will hurt like dying, Lin Dong warned. Everything this month has. Poor. And that was when Ran Feng woke up. Mid-battle, mid-despair, the seal of his advancement slumber cracked from the inside, and my little brother walked out of my inner world on his own 2 feet. Not a child flame anymore. A youth, tall as my shoulder, burning white, 7 stars of fire spirit standing in the middle of a battlefield, grinning at my expression. Big brother, he said, first words in months. Then he looked at Liu Mei, who happened to be standing beside me holding a flaming spear. Is this one my sister-in-law? We are in a death battle. That's not a no. I have fought corpse demons, ghost emperors, and my own government, and my little brother nearly finished me in one sentence. Then he stopped grinning and became my armor, a fire spirit possessing his own brother, flame sheeting over every inch of me. His power braided through my meridians until my own hands looked like something out of a temple mural. Jinwei bought us the opening. His yin-yang bagua severed the ghost emperor's escape space in one full-cost stroke, the kind of technique that comes out of your own foundations and never grows back. His hair went gray at the temples in the time it took to complete the seal, and he grinned about it like an idiot. The purifying ancient sword I'd lent the stone warden flashed as the feint, exactly where an 8-star monster would expect the real threat to come from. Dreadfang's ghost netherblade batted it aside, and his armor swatted through my lotus's deliberately weakened outer petals, exactly as designed, contemptuously, the way you brush aside a curtain, and met the core. The talisman ate him, not defeated him, ate him. The natural predator of all soul bodies met an 8th-rank soul body at point-blank range, and the black power went through his blade, through his ghost emperor armor, through the whole gray legend of him, and hollowed it out in one long swallow that made no sound at all. His last expression wasn't rage, it was recognition, the specific look of a thing from the ghost realm meeting one of the 12 weapons its own realm built in a human's hand at the bottom of a nowhere forest. A 4-star Do-D killed a full ghost emperor that night. The continent would be retelling it badly for years, and every version would leave out the woman in white, which is the part that actually mattered. I'd love to end the scene there, but villains read the same books we do. Ashbane and Ruyan came out of the smoke before the body finished cooling, the man-shaped appetite and the woman with a corpse in her arms, and they didn't come for us. They came for the Ghost Emperor's escaping soul mark, the seed of everything he'd been, still spinning loose in the air above the crater. Ashbane swallowed it in one motion, without ceremony, without even looking at the 4 of us who'd done the actual work. "Thank you," he said, and I'd never heard a voice with less person in it. "You saved me a century." Then he detonated the forest's broken space as a door and stepped through it, and Ruyan stepped after him, and the woods came down behind them. The Yin Corpse forest died that night. Burned, drained, spent, a whole ecosystem of the dead spent as fuel in the space of one gray moon. And far away, on a throne wrapped in ghost chi, something that called itself immortal, watched our smoke rise and smiled the way you smile at a promising audition. I stood in the ashes, 4 stars tall, with an emperor in my palm's ledger and my little brother's fire cooling on my shoulders. Around me, Jinwei with gray temples, Shuilan with soot on her moonlight, Liu Mei holding a hair ornament that had stopped humming, and 100 rescued strangers being counted twice. Somebody very high up had just started keeping a file on me. Fair, I keep files too, and I'd just opened 3. The aftermath was a bazaar, and the merchandise was me. Competition results. First place, by a margin nobody bothered calculating. Me, Liu Mei, and Jinwei took the top 10 prize. Royal Pool Access, Do-D Pills, and Shadowfang, freed of his dead forest, cancelled our old deal on the grounds that friends don't invoice friends. One good thing grew out of those ashes at least. Then the 9 great super sects lined up to bid on the Rookie King, and I got to hear my market price read aloud. Solomon offered a battle soul, with the serene confidence of a sect whose elder I had personally watched eat his own brother. I looked their representative in the eye while he made the offer. He didn't blink. Professionals. Wanhua Pavilion offered their myriad flowers baptism. Purgatory Hall offered an immortal technique and a place on their successor track. The ancient Desolation Palace offered their 8 gates. Then the bidding got heavy. The Xuanling King himself, the royal family, 9 stars, the crown of the entire region, leaned forward and promised to raise me to battle immortal within 70 years. 70. Han Fei's 100-year sneer, halved, handed over like a business card. And Pill Valley, whose Valley Master already was a battle immortal, promised to make me an immortal rank alchemist in 20 years. Every door on the continent, open at once. Decades of guaranteed glory, 6 flavors, no waiting. I appreciate the honor, I said, and picked the incense-burning pavilion, which had offered me approximately nothing. 8 recruiters experienced heartburn in unison. The Pill Valley representative asked me to repeat myself. What can I say? My grandfather smelled an old fire on that mountain. Their deputy Lin Dong had bled beside us all night without once mentioning recruitment, and their tablet guardian friend had quietly put in a word from inside a steely. You cannot buy me. You can absolutely earn me. It's just slower and tends to involve mortal danger. The Xuanling King took the rejection the way rotten royalty takes everything, smiling with his mouth only, filing the insult somewhere with a date on it. And on his way out, he nearly executed a girl for existing. Verdant song. A slender musician among the recruits, quiet, unranked, whose bloodline read as Medusa clan, the snake people his family had been feuding with for millennia over a stretch of desert. He sensed it in passing, the way you notice a smell, and simply raised his hand to remove her from the record. Lin Dong stepped between them. 7-star peak against 9, and he did it without hurrying. She's ours, he said, as of this moment. The king lowered his hand, because killing a super-sex disciple in front of 8 rivals is expensive, and left with his ledger a line longer. And the pavilion gained 1 more new disciple, with 1 more reason to hate the crown, which is how the incense-burning pavilion has apparently been recruiting for 10,000 years. And Verdant Song, once her hands stopped shaking, handed me the news that stopped my heart. You fought for me, she said, so I'll trade you something. You have the aura of my clan on you. Old and very close. Are you married to a snake, human? To a python. There's a difference, and she'll explain it at length. Then she told me her clan's new legend. A woman who had appeared among the Medusa tribe some years ago, radiating 9 colors, the 9-colored sky-swallowing python, an evolution their oldest texts barely dared to name aloud. 9 feuding tribes had bowed to her inside a season. 3 refused and were bowed 4. Every power within 1,000 miles now wanted her blood in a bottle. And she had gone into clan seclusion to claim her inheritance, 5 years deep, guarded by her own people and coveted by everyone else's. Mei Hua. My wife had landed among her own distant kin, been crowned by her own bloodline, and immediately had to hide inside a mountain to survive her own importance. I said it out loud, in front of witnesses, so the universe could hold me to it. 5 years. Whenever she comes out of that seclusion, I'll be standing at the door, and anyone who blocks the road can be a legend too, a cautionary one. Verdant Song studied me for a moment, then bowed, low, in a way that had nothing to do with sect ranks. The goodbyes came fast after that. Xuelad's legacy pulled her to Wanhua Pavilion Garden Sect, the right place for a bright moon heir, and Lin Dong himself talked her into it while I stood there feeling every kind of useless. Go, I told her. Their baptism will do for you what a forest full of ghosts did for me, and with fewer corpses. Will you still come? When it's time? Pinky, remember? I don't renegotiate with children or clans. She cried and pretended she wasn't, told me to become worthy of my own reputation, and left with her family's escort while the flowers on their carriage were still arguing with the ash in the air. A quiet boy named Song Jun, who had something strange sleeping in his voice, I heard it once, a resonance under the words, like a bell in another room, joined the ancient Desolation Palace and made a point of promising, at my back, that he'd surpass me. Get in line, kid. It's a long line, and by now everyone in it is either dead or friendly. And 5 of us went up the mountain together. Me, Ran Feng, openly my brother now, wearing his new face, Jin Wei, Liu Mei, and Verdant Song. The incense-burning pavilion sat on Mount Hua, behind the Fentian domain, a standing wall of fire across the whole mountain approach, kept burning for 10,000 years, which had once killed a Doshan who knocked at it wrong. 9 mountains and 1 city, that's how the locals described the sect Heartland, and this was the mountain that burned. Inside, the pavilion split 3 ways. Heavenly Palace, the strongest, the richest, the one with the resources and the waiting lists. Earth Hall, the solid middle. And Human Hall, the smallest, the poorest, so thin on disciples that the other 2 halls had a whole tradition of jokes about it. Human Hall also had, gathering dust in its vault, a weapon called the Heaven-Shifting Ruler, with which, according to the pavilion's own records, some ancient peak Do Di had once fought 2 battle immortals simultaneously and walked away. Human Hall, said my grandfather before the recruiters had finished breathing. The fire I remember is tied to that hall. Also, a ruler like that, in a hall this desperate, is practically addressed to you by name. Tang Wen, the Heavenly Palace's vice master, made his pitch anyway, and then made his opinion known when I declined it. You have the strongest soul in 6 generations, he said, and you want to join the hall that can't fill its own dormitories. In 10,000 years, exactly 2 disciples have ever mastered that ruler. One of them founded this pavilion. Then the records do an update. Arrogant brat, he said to the room, and left with 2/3 of the incoming class following him, because most people quite sensibly go where the resources are. 4 of us stayed in that hall. Me, Ran Feng, Jin Wei, Liu Mei, and Verdant Song made 5 when she caught up. Yun Shi, Human Hall's vice master, accepted us with a shrug that didn't match his eyes. Human Hall is in decline, he told us, walking us out. It is not, however, a pushover. Welcome home. Home turned out to be Wuju Residence, a small, clean courtyard with 5 wooden cabins, a stone tea table someone had set out for us before we arrived, and a night-blooming jasmine that made the whole yard smell like an apology for the poverty. Each cabin was its own sealed little space, soundproof, private, the kind of design that tells you the pavilion expects its disciples to have secrets. And behind the courtyard, the Tongtian River, a blue-green waterfall pouring down out of the endless void realm itself, silent, cold, and doing something to my soul on contact that felt like being forgiven for things. My grandfather took one look at that river and went quiet in a way I'd learned to bookmark. Grandmaster, what is it? Tomorrow. Rest today. which, from him, is the loudest possible answer. That first night, 5 soundproof cabins around one courtyard held more secrets than furniture, and I heard most of them anyway, because a mortal Emperor Realm soul is a rude houseguest. Verdant Song sat in hers, whispering loyalty to a queen she'd never met, my wife as it happened, and swearing to obtain something inside this pavilion, some purpose she'd joined a super sect specifically to reach. Jin Wei lay in his, frowning at the ceiling. "This isn't what father described at all," he muttered. "Not even close." Then, with genuine awe, 4-star Do Di, and he killed the twin ghost emperor. If that fusion lotus had hit me, I'd be a rumor. Say what you like about the boy's manners. His threat assessment is excellent. Lu Mei sat on her bed, swinging her legs, talking to the dark. "I wonder where Cinderwing went. Will he scold me for sneaking out?" A pause. "My brother always said humans are wicked people with ulterior motives. I don't see it. They didn't look wicked tonight." Cinderwing, the name of the sacred flame whose seeds slept in my soul sea, spoken casually by a girl on a bed, like the name of a strict relative, filed, underlined, 3 times. And in my own cabin, I broke through to 4-star mid, the forest's entire harvest finally settling into place, quiet as a ledger balancing, while my grandfather lectured me about the top of the road I was on. "To become a battle immortal," he said, "you don't add power, you compress it. The whole ocean of battle chi in your body, condensed down into a Do core. And with a Do core comes the thing that separates immortals from everyone below them. A domain," he said, and the word landed in my head like a struck bell. "A region of the world where your law is the local law." The lecture died mid-sentence because the soul jade in my ring lit up. Mei Hua's thread, blazing, not steady and far. Close, not on some other continent, here, in the Zhuanchen 3 heavens, near enough that the jade sang in my palm like it was trying to lead me by the hand. I was on my feet with her name half-shouted before my grandfather caught me by the scruff of the soul and sat me down. "Not tonight," he said. "Not at 4 stars, in a strange sect with a king who already hates you. Soon, not tonight." Somewhere out there in the same hour, I knew exactly what was happening on the other end of that thread. She'd be holding her jade, feeling me close, and saying something proud and terrifying to an empty room. Knowing her, something like, "Your life is mine, husband. Nobody is permitted to damage my property. 5 years or seclusion's end, whichever comes first. Hold on, wife. Your property is on its way up the rankings." What the jade couldn't show me was the rest of that night's business elsewhere. A desert warlord named Wei Tang, furious that the 9-colored woman had walked into his ambitions, signing an alliance against the Medusa clan on terms that would ruin him. Solomon standing behind him, taking notes. And behind them both the Xuanling king, who wanted the 9-colored sky-swallowing python's blood, the way collectors want the last piece of a set, and who had already told his advisor, out loud, that once he had it, the Medusa clan and my pavilion could both be erased in the same season. Everything that loved my wife was small and scattered. Everything that wanted to own her wore a crown. Sleep did not come easy in the house of the incense-burning pavilion. It never would again. Morning brought orientation, and orientation turned out to be an ambush with paperwork. Yun Shi walked us to the hall, explaining Human Hall's philosophy on the way. Resources go to strength. Private duels are permitted and encouraged as long as nobody dies, and the Ghost Realm's entrance sits near enough to the pavilion that clearing monsters out of it counts as homework. Then he opened a door into a grand hall containing a glowing portal and 128 extremely motivated strangers, named disciples. Outsiders, talented, unaffiliated, some of them years older than us, who'd spent their lives killing ghost creatures on the pavilion's behalf to earn one single chance. Challenge the incoming class, beat them, take their slots. Every one of them had bled for the privilege of standing in that room. 128 of them. 5 of us. The pavilion called it a warm welcome. I called it a Tuesday. "Fight until one side concedes," their spokesman said. "Who goes first?" "Why don't you all come at once?" I said. The uproar was gratifying. Somebody in the back asked whether I was mentally unwell. Their leadership, 3 5-star Do Di, the top of the group, held a hurried conference in which the word disrespect featured heavily. Their third strongest, a halberd man named Qin Shi, stepped up first, on the theory that the nail that sticks out at least gets to pick its hammer. Then somebody in the crowd mentioned the rumor. Heavy black ruler, 4 stars, killed the twin ghost emperor. Qin Shi's pupils shrank. "What's your name?" "Lin Yan." To his credit, he still came, and I did something cruel. I let my weapon fight him. Aoguang came off the heavenly flame ancient ruler as a fire dragon the size of a horse, ate the silver chi off Qin Shi's halberd like noodles off a bowl, chased him around the hall while 127 of his colleagues watched, and then, after Qin Shi abandoned the weapon entirely and unleashed an immortal rank technique out of desperation, dropped him unconscious with a 23-color fireball. I spent the entire duel standing at the edge holding my ruler like a fishing rod. "Put the fire out," I told Aoguang. "Do you want someone to die?" He looked at me for praise like a dog with a bird. The audience learned an important lesson about the difference between a real disciple and a named one, and my weapon learned that showing off gets him praised, which I will be paying for forever. Their answer was everyone at once, which is what I'd asked for in the first place. Liu Mei took Qin Xuan, their strongest, a 5-star peak earth wall of a man who announced that he doesn't fight women, and then spent the next several minutes punching what felt to him like a sponge while her azure flame slipped past his defenses and quietly unsettled his heart. Ran Feng took Mei Lin and his feather fan, canceling gale force techniques with a bored look because a fire spirit at 7 stars pretending to be 4 is the single worst matchup in the building. Jin Wei and Verdant Song took 10 perfection-level fighters together. Her 3 little snakes, red, white, green, treasures of the Medusa royal line, melted a 10-man combined beam attack in midair and then chased the owners around the hall by the ankles while Jin Wei laughed himself sick and called out advice. So all 127 still standing stacked into their trump card, the Devouring Ghost Formation. 10 stories of them, layer on layer, condensing into a single energy giant, a technique built for killing Ghost Realm monsters, powered by 127 veterans who'd used it 100 times and never lost with it. "We'll be a little despicable," Qin Xuan said from the top, without shame, "as long as we win." Honest. I appreciated it, and impressive, genuinely, right up to the structural flaw at the heart of their plan, which was building a formation in front of a battle formation master. My divine movement array left my palm as a scroll of milky fire, unrolled in the air, and swallowed their giant whole. 5,500 core inscriptions, 1 cage, walls that ate the power they punched. Then I stepped into the formation core, and inside it there were suddenly countless copies of me, standing on every side, palms out, because inside my own formation, the geography wears my face. The giant collapsed like a tent with the pole kicked out. 127 proud veterans sat down very suddenly on the marble. "We lost," Qin Xuan said, and I've rarely heard 2 words cost so much. Liu Mei immediately asked Yun Shi whether they could join anyway. She meant it. She'd fought them and decided their character was fine, and wanted the rules bent for 127 strangers on the strength of one afternoon's impression. "Rules are rules," Yun Shi told her. She sighed at the floor. Qin Xuan, gathering his people at the door, looked at her for a long moment and then bowed to us on the way out. "I look forward to seeing you at the sect tournament," he said. Losing gracefully in front of an audience that watched you lose, that takes a spine. Above the hall, unseen on the rafters, an old man who'd been napping through the whole affair stopped napping. I felt his attention land on me and stay there, and caught 2 muttered words that I would spend the next month trying to translate. That plan. Everything in this world wants to recruit me or eat me. The strong ones start with surveillance. The reward for the gauntlet was the portal, and the portal was the single best thing the pavilion owned. The Dodi River. Not a river. A network of independent spaces, opened by immortals, filled with something no ordinary family could ever afford. The Dodi bodies of the fallen great. When a Dodi dies, his body technique can be preserved here as an orb of light, waiting for an heir. You go in, one of them chooses you, and it becomes yours. A giant energy body that wraps your frame and multiplies what you are. Ranked 1 through 10. Most disciples emerge with a 4th or 5th. Human Hall's standing record was a 6th. "There is a 10th in there," Yun Shi mentioned, in the tone of a man describing a mountain nobody has climbed. "In 10,000 years, 2 people have taken theirs from that deep. One of them founded this pavilion." Inside, the river tried to hand me a 4th-grade body immediately, an invisible force grabbing at me the second I landed, the way vending machines push the cheap thing first. My grandfather slapped it aside with a wave that dissolved the pull. "You get 1 chance in here," he said. "Take the offer, lose the search. Now come." Deep. We went down. Past orb after glowing orb, each one a dead legend watching us go by, and toward a pressure at the very bottom that all the other legends were carefully not looking at. Golden soil that ate my soul power on contact. A hidden gate that only opened after my grandfather roared at it, and past that, rising out of empty ground when I fed it mental energy, a circular golden palace with a statue standing on its roof, one hand pointing at the sky. The statue was the guard, and the guard introduced himself by nearly folding me into the floor with 1 sentence of ambient pressure. My knees hit stone. The stone cracked several meters down. "A 4-star Dodi," he said, surprised. "You were the 3rd person to reach this room. The immortal great emperor, a peak Dodi who, in the old war, had personally held off 2 emperor-rank monsters of the extraterritorial evil clan, creatures worth a human battle immortal each, using a defensive art called the immortal golden body. 5 times a man's defense, instantly, at will. Below the immortal realms, he was functionally a wall placed at the end of the world. The other 2 visitors, he mentioned in passing, had been a 6-star and an 8-star peak 1,000 years ago. One was called something like Elder Chen. The other was the head of this pavilion. Both had been shown the door. I stood up off my cracked knee anyway and attacked him with everything I own. He graded it like homework. Huangchuan Heavenly Fury, an unusually rare soul attack against a normal opponent, effective. 7-fold heaven-breaking ruler, first strike, with Aoguang riding the blow. Against a 5-star, lethal. Against me, decorative. He didn't even move for that one. He let it hit him and stood inside the explosion while golden light shrugged the fire off his skin. "Your attacks are excellent, and your body is a liability," he said. "You will die at 5 stars. If this is all you have, go find another orb." I was 2 moves from a polite rejection when my grandfather told me to do the forbidden thing. I lit the Shao clan mark. The Emperor's pressure vanished so fast my knees forgot their job. He crossed the hall instantly, opened a cut on my arm with one fingertip, floated 3 drops of my blood up to his face, and smelled them. And then this 10,000-year-old fortress of a soul got emotional in front of me, because once, at the edge of death, he'd found the 18th sacred flame at a place called Wang Tianya. He'd been 8-star perfection then, proud of his golden body, alone with a treasure and no witnesses, so he tried to devour it. It destroyed his physical body and started on his soul, and he was minutes from ending when a stranger arrived. A battle immortal who subdued the flame of immortality with his bare hands, condensed the dying man a new body out of nothing, and then, holding a sacred flame he had every right to keep, let the flame choose between them. It chose the dying stranger. And the man who'd saved him wasn't displeased. He handed it over, wished him well, and left. Hao Tian, of the Shao clan. Your ancestor gave me the thing that made me, the immortal great emperor said. 10,000 years and there has never been anyone to repay. And now here you are, in the wrong realm, at the wrong rank, wearing his mark on your forehead. He turned to the golden body suspended in the middle of the hall. I bestow this 10th grade body upon the descendant of the Shao clan. Take it. Make it shine outside where I could not. The armor soul of the old war's greatest wall came into me like something coming home, and it fought me for a while about the details. A golden body, ranked second only to the theoretical peak, does not simply move in, until my clan mark flared again, and it went quiet, docile, like a hound recognizing a family scent. He gave me 1 map and 2 warnings before he went. The map, his true legacy, the flame of immortality itself, and the completed immortal golden body art, waits at the forgotten edge of the Tianxing continent, the north of the 4 subcontinents. My new body will point the way like a compass when I'm close. The first warning, not before 7 stars. Otherwise, you will repeat my exact mistake, and there will be no Hao Tian walking past that day. The second, in a voice with the whole war still in it, the sacred flames must never fall to the extraterritorial evil clan. They were collecting them, back then. Nobody ever learned why. If one of them ever ends up in their hands, you destroy it, whatever it costs. Promise me with your family's name. I promised with my family's name. Then go. My remnant has guarded this long enough. And he dissolved into golden fragments, palace and all, the hall collapsing behind me as I walked out, another teacher spent on me, the 3rd in 1 year. The list of people I owe a resurrection keeps growing, and I keep letting it, because the alternative is a shorter list and a smaller man. I spent a month in the river fusing the immortal body. Everyone else finished in 10 days. The other 4 came out with 6th grade bodies, Liu Mei with a 7th, which in any other decade would have been the pavilion's news of the year, and instead became a footnote. 10 days would have been enough for me too. I took 30 on purpose, because I'd noticed something about my own climb. Since arriving in the 3 heavens, I had fought nothing but opponents above my level, and won, and every win had added a floor to a tower nobody had poured concrete under. Foundations decide ceilings. So I used the extra 3 weeks to run the purest energy I'd ever touched back down through everything I already had, settling the immortal body into me properly, thickening the Qi Si, making sure that when I did break through again, it wouldn't be a tower built fast and falling fashionably. When I walked out golden and unhurried with 100 feet of dead emperor's armor folded into my spine, Liu Mei went instantly wary at the pressure. Ran Feng grinned and punched my shoulder with no force in it at all, and my grandfather said nothing, which is his highest grade. Big brother, Ran Feng said. 10th? 10th. I'm telling everyone. You are telling no one. He told Jin Wei within the hour, and elsewhere, 2 pots boiled over. In the royal palace, the Xuanling king heard that the immortal body he'd coveted for his entire reign, the one prize in that river he'd never been able to even locate, the one he'd been counting on for his own step into the immortal realms, had gone to some pavilion brat. He lifted his messenger off the floor by the collar, made him repeat it, and then reduced him to dust on principle. Then he sat back down and said the sentence that would define my next several months. It seems advancing to battle immortal has become urgent. And on Red Mountain Summit, in a formation drawn in Ghost Chi, Ashbane took the Ghost Emperor's heart out of his own chest cavity, the essential organ every Ghost Emperor leaves behind, extractable from a devoured soul mark by methods I'd rather not know, and swallowed it. Ru Yan stood guard at the circle's edge with her mummified lover in her arms, muttering about backup plans, while the thing in the middle jumped from 5 stars to 6-star perfection in one sitting and kept climbing. 2 Ghost Emperors in one belly, digesting toward a throne. My villains were leveling off screen. I find that motivating. The old man from the rafters summoned me the day I emerged, and finding his house was a quest in itself. An elder of human hall who lived, out of pure contrariness, in the middle of the heavenly palace, at the end of an alley where every disciple I asked directions from looked at me like I'd requested the plague. On the way, I got directions from a suspiciously pretty young man whose walk, skin, and voice were all filing complaints against the disguise. 5-star strength, daddy issues audible from a distance, deeply curious about whoever won the immortal body. The pavilion has a princess, and she sneaks around in costume. Not my circus, bookmarked anyway. Elder Chen's cabin greeted me with a wind blast that would have gutted a 5-star. His idea of a doorbell, which my golden immortal body ate before I'd finished my bow. "So it really is the immortal body," said a voice from the dark inside. Good. If you couldn't survive that, this conversation was going to be short. Inside, the cabin was carpeted wall to wall with formation scrolls, hundreds of them, stacked and rolled and layered across a floor the size of a courtyard, all humming faintly like a kennel of sleeping weapons. My divine movement runes stirred in my skull the moment the door shut. "Take me as your master," the old man said in place of hello. I refused in place of small talk. I meant it, mostly. I had teachers, a dead emperor's mantra in my veins, a dragon king in my ring, 3 graves worth of obligations. And a formal master-disciple bond isn't a class schedule, it's a leash with sentiment attached. Also, any negotiation where the other side opens that eager can be improved by walking toward the door. "A teacher for a day is a father for life," I said. "I already have the paperwork. Junior takes his leave." I got 4 steps. "You stubborn little rat." The old man's sigh could have moved furniture. "Fine, come back. No restrictions. You keep every other teacher. You come and go as you like. You learn what you want, and I teach you formations and pills both. 2 conditions. Name them. 1. Reach Battle Immortal within 20 years, or never use my name in public. I refuse to be embarrassed posthumously." He paused. 2. 3 favors, unnamed, invoiced whenever I please. 3 unnamed favors from a rank 1 Emperor Alchemist is not a condition, it's an inheritance. I made a show of hesitating, and my grandfather's voice arrived in my head fast and flat. I remember this one. He was there, in the era of Cinderwing. "Take the deal. Take it now." So I took it with theatrical reluctance, and the old man beamed like he'd won, which is exactly how you should always let elders feel about deals that favor you. Then he introduced himself properly, and the room got heavy. Embervane, the invincible god of war, the only battle formation master in the entire Xuantian 3 heavens. Mental energy at the celestial master tier, the level, he explained while I sat down harder than I meant to, that lets a man stalemate a Doshan. 6th rank formations, a 9-star body carrying an art that outranks the body entirely. And the reason for the title, a century odd ago, the Xuanling royal family moved to annex the Medusa clan for good. A battle immortal, 2 peak Do D, and a small army of specialists sent into the desert. Balance of power politics being what they are, the pavilion sent exactly 1 man to stop it. He held all of them, alone. Long enough for the snake clans to counterattack and cripple the royal expedition, which is why the Medusa clan still exists, and why the crown has hated this mountain ever since. The royal family's answer was an ambush 100 years ago, a 9-star and 2 8-stars, arranged by their own advisor, and to this day, the palace believes it worked. My new master and the royal family had the kind of history you measure in craters. He looked at my divine movement rune next, and couldn't see inside it. He probed it 3 times, with mental energy that made mine feel like a candle beside a furnace, and came back frowning. "Your natal rune repels me. It feels like an ocean," he said slowly. "Like an abyss. Like a prison." 3 words I did not love hearing about the thing installed in my skull. I told him what the phantom told me, 1/4 of a whole. He grunted and said the other 3/4 were now his problem as well as mine, which is the first time in my life a teacher's opening move was admitting he didn't know something. I decided then that I liked him. I did not tell him. Elders get unbearable. The royal family, meanwhile, delivered a live demonstration of everything he just told me on the same afternoon with excellent timing. Their 6th prince, Li Chang, 5-star late, a man with 3 older brothers and a succession to worry about, showed up outside our Fentian domain uninvited to collect the royal pool candidates like parcels purely so his father would notice him doing something. His own attendant begged him not to force the airspace above a supersect. He forced it anyway, failed, and then stood outside our firewall shouting about hospitality for an hour while nobody came out. Then Elder Chen came out, in the shape of an old man in patched clothes, with 5 smiling elders behind him. "So it's the Xuanling king's dog's son," he said pleasantly. "We don't welcome your family here. Would you prefer to do it yourself, or shall I?" I want to record that all 5 of Li Chang's party turned to flee before anyone announced anything, because killing intent is a language, and my master is fluent. He sealed the space around them, and the strike he sent at the prince would have ended the royal succession problem permanently, and then the Xuanling king himself arrived, not in person. As an energy clone, condensed at enormous cost across a continent's distance, carrying 80% of the real thing's power. The 2 old enemies had their rematch over our mountain, while 3 new disciples watched from below with their mouths open. "Embervane," the clone said, with the specific hatred of a man seeing a ghost he paid for. "You touched this threshold. When?" "Recently. Would you like to flee in disarray again, or has a century improved you?" The king's answer was a yellow pearl, a heaven-breaking pearl, wrapped in a black and white light that made my soul crawl. Even at that distance, my probe came back scalded, and my grandfather identified what was inside it in 1 syllable. The power of life and death. The mark of a 9-star Do D past the 6th revolution, the seed of what becomes a battle immortal. My master answered with a silver thunder fox, condensed out of his own battle chi, and the fox cut the pearl in half. The clone withdrew with a smile full of promises and a line about taking back a century of humiliation with interest. And as it dissipated, my grandfather murmured the thing that turned my whole month sideways. He'd smelled a sacred flame's fluctuation on that foe. Faint, wrong, not held, worn, like a stolen coat somebody had been sleeping in for centuries. Meanwhile, in a lacquered hall a continent away, the Xuanling king coughed blood into his sleeve and gave his advisor Luo Feng 2 orders. Tell Solomon to hunt Embervein, and tell them he's only just stepped into the 9 stars. Feed your allies bad numbers, let them break their teeth on it, and collect what's left. When the snipe and the clam fight, the fisherman eats. Everything about the trip we then had to take, into that same king's capital, to soak in that same king's royal pool, escorted by the man he'd tried to murder, was therefore seasoned correctly from the start. Xuanling City sits at the dead center of the Xuantian Three Heavens, a 1,000-mile fortress metropolis behind walls tens of meters high, raised over generations to hold back the Medusa clan from the eastern desert, streets stacked with the wealth of 10,000 years of what the histories politely call acquisition. We traveled with Elder Chen, which made customs interesting. A single silver token with 3 characters on it flashed for half a second, and the gate captain went from demanding papers to saluting so hard his armor rang. Top-tier sect leadership tokens admit 1 person. My master brought 3 students through on his, and the reserve regiment commander himself came down to personally escort us through a side passage rather than let a subordinate discover what happens when you tell that old man no. The city's first real gift was comedy gold. Prince Li Chang, freshly demoted and looking for a mood improvement, bumped into a shabby old man on the main street and decided the shabby old man owed him 1,000 gold for the offense to his clothing. The shabby old man was Elder Chen. "I'm a stubborn person," my master said, loud enough for 4 blocks. A crowd assembled at the speed crowds always assemble around aristocratic misbehavior. Somebody recognized the prince. Somebody else said what everyone was thinking about the prince's general reputation. And then the royal advisor Luo Feng materialized out of the crowd at the speed of pure career instinct, took one look at whose sleeve his prince was tugging, and made a decision that will warm me on cold nights forever. "Kneel," he told Li Chang, "and apologize." "Luo Feng, you don't command." The advisor moved like a ghost, kicked the back of the 6th prince's ankle, and put a son of the Xuanling royal family on his knees in a public street in front of several hundred of his father's subjects. Then, while the crowd cheered a man whose name they didn't know, he formally stripped Li Chang of his eligibility for the succession, on the spot, out loud, with witnesses. "He's a junior," Elder Chen said, walking away without looking back. "A simple lesson will do. Some days the road gives you gifts." And then the advisor led us to the front door of the family vault, and the comedy stopped. The underground palace. 7 layers deep, the treasury of everything the royal family has ever taken, guarded like a god's tomb by 3 legions worth of professionals. The Tiger Fang, 5-star minimum, 200 strong. The Wolf Eagle, 6-star minimum. And 10 men called the Dragon Devouring Legion, 7-star minimum, answerable to the king alone. The entrance to the royal pool ran through the palace's first layer, and the air down there was humid in a way no underground vault should be. Wet, like standing inside a drained ocean. My soul power slipped out for one polite look, and something vast in the deep swallowed the probe whole and came up the line after me. Elder Chen flicked it away mid-air without turning his head or interrupting his conversation. "Store your soul power and your curiosity," he messaged me privately. "This place is not our pavilion." Noted, but 2 facts had already boarded my brain and taken seats. 1. My grandfather's instinct now put the sacred flame somewhere under this palace. 2. Something down there was strong enough to bite me through a keyhole. The royal family put 5 of us on the pool list. Me, Liu Mei, Jin Wei, and 2 of their own, a brother-sister act named Slender Jin and Barrel Han, one tall as a flagpole and thin as a rumor, one barely over a meter and built like a wine cask, both radiating the specific serenity of people who have read the exam answers in advance. "Keep an eye on those 2, my master's voice said in my head as we descended. "If you can manage it, don't let them touch the pool at all." He didn't explain. Neither did the royal advisor, who mentioned in passing that the pool grants 1 month maximum, and that of the last 10 participants, not 1 had succeeded. And nobody at all mentioned the 6th participant the king had entered, the one posted at the exit, with written instructions containing the phrase, "No survivors." Royal hospitality. The pool came with a lid. The first layer of the palace held a teleport altar, built, in a detail I enjoyed, by Elder Chen himself, back when the royals still paid him instead of ambushing him. It threw the 5 of us into the pool's antechamber, a vast sunken basin ringed by 9 tunnels, with a golden tray at the bottom where a silver dragon statue slept, circled by little swimming goldfish. The royal siblings hit the ground running. Literally, they snatched fish off the tray and bolted into tunnels without a word of explanation, because the whole obstacle was designed on the assumption that outsiders wouldn't know the rules. Outsiders didn't. My master's students did. Elder Chen had briefed me on the whole machine in advance. The 9 fish-playing dragon formation, the guardian array of the royal pool, once the war formation of 9 drowned kings. Each goldfish wakes 1 guardian in 1 tunnel. Beat your guardian, take an array stone. Stones open the way in. The fish are ranked 1 stripe to 9. The siblings had grabbed the 1 stripe and 2 stripe fish. The weakest guardians, the fastest clears. I took the 9-striped fish, the one whose guardian read as 8-star. Liu Mei called me an idiot with unexpected heat in her voice. She wasn't wrong. I just had an advantage she couldn't see riding in my ring. My tunnel held a fish source stone set into the floor, one per tunnel, immovable. Each one formed where one of the 9 Tianmu elders had fallen. Fuse your goldfish to the stone with battle chi, and the stone gives back the guardian. Mine woke out of the floor like a drowned scholar. Long black hair, blue robes, webbed fingers, and fish pupils in a handsome scholarly face. Water dripped off him continuously onto stone that had been dry for 1,000 years. "Who dares challenge us?" he said, in the tone of a man used to lecturing. "Junior comes to borrow the array stone." "Then defeat me first," he said, perfectly civil, and then he caught the scent of my flame, and civility evaporated. His name was Tian Lei, last clan chief of the Tianmu fish clan, and the thing that killed his entire race had smelled exactly like the fire on my hands. He came at me with 8 stars of perfection-grade fury and no interest in conversation, screaming questions he had no intention of hearing answers to. "Who are you? What is your relationship to the Xuanling royal family? Explain, or die." His first strike went through my chest, through my soul clone's chest, technically. I'd sent the black-clothed version of myself forward the moment his aura spiked, because when an 8-star opens with murder, you do not stand where you were standing. The clone took a blow that would have hospitalized my real body for a season, and I coughed up my heart rate from 20 meters away. Then my grandfather stepped out of my ring and hit the last clan chief of the Tianmu fish once with a dragon claw, and the conversation restarted on very different footing. Here's the history the royal family pays historians to forget. Under this city there once ran a sea, not a lake, a genuine underground ocean hundreds of miles across, called the Changshui Sea, home of the Tianmu fish clan, a peaceful race with cultivation, wealth, and the fatal misfortune of living on top of both. The founder of the Xuanling royal family came to the middle of the 3 heavens after the northern sects drove him out of the mountains. He found the sea. He gathered every fire-wielding warlord he could hire or promise, and one ordinary day, while the clan rested, he slaughtered an entire civilization in the dark. Then his heirs drained what was left, packed it with earth, spent decades building this 7-layer palace on the graves, and financed a dynasty on the loot. "Everything you see above us," Tian Lei said, "was paid for by my people's bodies. The pool you came to bathe in was our forbidden land. They didn't even change the water, they only changed the name." And then he gave you the detail that reordered every priority I had. The founder's fire hadn't been his. Tian Lei had felt it up close in the last hour of his clan, a flame so far above mortal fire that it controlled the man carrying it, not the reverse. He remembered the founder screaming mid-slaughter as his own weapon backlashed through him. He remembered the sensation of a fire that could burn souls, and the specific terror of feeling resistance inside it. Something in that flame had not consented. My grandfather and I very carefully did not look at each other. Sacred flame, forcibly devoured, imperfectly suppressed, still fighting after 1,000 years, somewhere under this palace, all but confirmed by a witness who died at the scene. So instead of a duel, my tunnel hosted a negotiation, because a dead clan chief guarding his murderer's treasure vault has exactly one lever left, and he'd been waiting centuries for someone strong enough to pull it. His offer came first, and it was enormous. The mother of the immortal spirit Bodhi tree, a name spoken in alchemist scripture the way sailors speak of islands they've never reached, growing on the 6th layer of this very palace. A herb that restores soul power itself, enough to bring a wisp of a broken soul back to its peak. Enough, my grandfather said very quietly, to eventually push a mortal emperor soul like mine toward the saint realm, a tier no valley master on this continent has reached. Rooted too deep for even the royals to move, and useless to them anyway, nothing below a battle immortal can absorb it, and no battle immortal is fool enough to try. His price was a rescue. Before the end, I saw what was coming. I sealed my newborn daughter and hid her, not power, her life. Our clan's seal preserves. She has not aged a day. His fish eyes moved. It expires within the year. I don't know where she is. I made sure even my remnant wouldn't know, so nothing could be tortured out of me. But the conch will. He floated a dark brown conch shell across the tunnel to me. The sound of the sea, a genuine immortal artifact, currently sealed, dormant, and dead in the hand. It would wake when it neared his daughter's resting place, somewhere in Medusa clan territory, and guide us there. My grandfather swore on the name of the Dragon clan, which on this continent still means something. I swore on mine, for whatever a Zhao clan signature is worth in this realm, apparently either everything or a wanted poster, depending on the reader. One warning, Tian Lei added. Every member of the Xuanling royal family carries some fraction of that fire. It is very effective against my kind, and it is stronger than the flame on your hands, boy. By a distance, you should respect. And then, deal done, the drowned scholar became the best tour guide in the 3 heavens. The pool has 2 levels. Everyone knows the first. Soak, polish your battle chi, purge impurities, become a slightly better candidate for the lightning tribulation that separates 5 stars from 6. That's the version the royal family advertises, and it's true, and it's the tip of it. The second level is the reason only one person in the dynasty's entire history has ever gone in, the current Xuanling king. Because at the heart of the pool sits a fallen meteorite, and the meteorite's power can forge the prototype of a do core, The Battle Immortals, Oregon, decades early, in a month. The entry cannot be found, Tianlei said. It admits only a Tianmu token. I looked down at the conch in my hand. The conch looked smug. Objects near me picked that up from the dragon. 1 month is the maximum stay, he added, though the pool keeps its own time. 10 days inside for 1 outside. Use it. Outside my tunnel, the siblings had finished their errands and moved on to the actual assignment. They fed the silver dragon, their 2-week goldfish, woke it to 5-star perfection, and then Slenderjin threw a handful of powder into its face, a charm compound, royal issue, the kind of thing you'd only carry if your family had briefed you on what the guardian dragon is for. The dragon's pupils went red, and then the guardian of the 9-fish formation turned around and attacked my teammates, while a boy from the royal family laughed and explained, at volume, that accidents happen in pools, and nobody would ever know. It's a pity the first place winner isn't here, he said. We'd have wiped all of you out at once. Liu Mei, half a step from 5 stars, wearing armor she'd made out of azure fire, blocked a 5-star perfection dragon claw a full meter from her skin and then burned a hole in its belly. I want to note the exact moment I revised my opinion of my leaderboard rival. It was that one. Flame armor is an art almost nobody can perform. Turning fire into a wearable shape requires control I couldn't guarantee myself, and her fire had bitten through a Do-D beast's defenses like paper through paper. Then I walked out of my tunnel and returned the siblings' courtesy. It's only polite to reciprocate, I told Slenderjin, and fed the dragon my 9-striped fish. The dragon woke up the rest of the way. 6 stars. 7. Its belly wound sealed itself as we watched. The red charm light burned out of its eyes, and it looked around the basin for whoever had been holding a powder bag. Slenderjin ran for the tray. I pinned both siblings in place with a Huangquan soul strike, wished them a productive conversation with their own attack dog, and led my 2 teammates into the opened way while the royal screaming faded pleasantly behind us. At the threshold, the conch flared and the pool sorted us. Liu Mei and Jinwei washed into the first level, the public spa. Me, it pulled deeper, through the token's door, down to the second level, to an island in a golden sea where the sign at the gate said, Forbidden Land. A girl's voice came out of the water behind me, sweet as spoiled fruit. Would Big Brother like to play? I ran, no shame. Tianlei's last warning had been about her, the witch of the pool, the thing that wears little girls, whom even he wouldn't fight. Behind me, she called out, almost kindly, that running was pointless because the old guy inside would eat me anyway. The old guy inside. Wonderful. Everything in this world wants to recruit me or eat me, and I just entered the private residence of something in the second category. The island ran a full inventory of my escape options and confiscated all of them. No flight. I got 5 meters up, accelerated, and hit something with the give of cotton and the manners of a wall, then came down in a cloud of dust in front of my own weapon, who laughed at me for a full minute. No exit. The Forbidden Land gate worked one way, and I confirmed it twice, with feeling. And worst of all, no immortal body. The island's sealed space pinned Do-Di body arts flat to the floor. My brand new 10th grade insurance policy, the thing that made me confident enough to walk into a royal trap in the first place, void on arrival. We're not here to leave, said my grandfather, with the serenity of a being who is also trapped and doesn't rate the trap. We're here for the middle. The island was a riddle wearing a garden, herb fields of priceless plants, wooden dragon beard, fire rain vine, names an emperor rank alchemist knows the way merchants know coins, growing in soil so rich it should have hummed. Except none of them held any energy at all. And when I harvested one properly, root preserved, jade shovel, jade bottle, textbook technique, it turned to powder the instant it left the ground. Twice. Both times leaving behind one tiny mote of light that drifted inward, toward the center, like a tax being collected. Everything on this island was being slowly drunk by something at the core. 7 little streams ran outward from that core, arm thick at the outer gate, needle thin near the middle, and purer with every step inward. Water so refined that one fingertip's touch stripped every trace of fatigue out of my body and left the specific clean feeling of having been forgiven. And around the 7 streams, when I looked properly, 7 pillars of light stood in a pattern my grandfather recognized from a book, and, worse, from watching Zhen Wu do it once, 10,000 years ago, as a party trick. The Big Dipper, he said, a lock. Provoke it wrong, and the star power inside will kill an 8-star. Fortunately, I have a very good memory and an excellent late friend. He solved it in front of me, 1 pillar at a time, and each wrong-looking move opened a different way to die. An abyss tearing across the ground, a wall of flame, a scent so beautiful that my grip loosened before I caught myself. Then all 7 pillars turned at once, punched into an invisible wall, and the wall parted like a door being held for us. Behind it, a flat plateau of granite hundreds of meters across, and at its center, floating in the air, the engine of the entire royal pool. A round vessel like a shallow bowl, and above the bowl, rotating slowly, a palm-sized stone. A meteorite. The thing that turned an ordinary underground river into a legend, 1 drop at a time, for uncounted centuries. Every golden mile of water out there was this stone's diluted sweat. My sword noticed it before I did. The broken immortal sword from Ao Guang's secret realm, the half-finished blade 3 battle immortals had forged and never completed, the one I'd kept in a ring and lent out once and otherwise ignored, tore out of my storage ring on its own and hung in the air vibrating with naked greed. Then it drank half my battle chi without asking, which I permitted on my grandfather's advice, because he wanted to see how much it would take. Then it stopped asking about anything and started taking. A green power flowed up my arm from the hilt, past my elbow, up my shoulder, straight for the control room deep in my brain. The residual will inside that sword, the leftover force its 3 makers had poured in as its spirit seed, had spent 1,000 years in a hole and had just decided my body was the finishing touch it needed. "Give up," it said in my skull, in a woman's voice, pleasant as poison. "I am what 3 battle immortals left behind. Your 4 stars are a formality." 2 things saved me, neither of them my dignity. The sound of the sea flared blue on my chest. Tian Lei had quietly loaded his gift with a bodyguard clause, which is the single kindest thing anyone has done for me on this continent, and my divine movement rune came up out of the Niwan Palace like a landlord answering a break-in, radiating an appetite of its own that visibly frightened the intruder. Between them, they squeezed the green will out of me, and it condensed in the air into a woman, an energy body, graceful, ageless, thoroughly unrepentant. Ao Guang wanted to kill her on principle. That sword had hunted him for 1,000 years, and this was the thing that had been meant to replace him. My grandfather held up one claw and asked the better question. "What do you know about that stone?" So we negotiated with a burglar inside a vault, which is the most honest kind of negotiation available. Her cards laid out with a merchant's timing. The sword is incomplete not because of a flaw, but because of a missing step: tempering. The last stage of forging, the one that turns a shape into a weapon, and its 3 makers died in the war before they could perform it. And the metal they'd forged it from was a meteorite, the same class of star metal now rotating 20 meters in front of us. "It has a name in my maker's records," she said. "A life source stone. Earth grade, near its peak. Condensed life force, the sort only a battle immortal may absorb, and the sort that could restore a certain damaged soul to what it was." Her eyes went to my grandfather, and stayed there because she'd worked out who held the deciding vote. 1/10 of it tempers the sword. You may keep the rest. And if we simply kill you and take all of it, then you'll have 100% of a stone you cannot reach and a sword that will never obey anyone. I'm not asking for charity, Dragon. I'm quoting a price. Deal. Contingent on one small item. The stone hung inside a shattered space, a 10-meter sphere of dead spatial law, a thing ancient enough that even my grandfather only knew it from stories. Not a barrier, an absence where space itself is broken into a grinding mill, and any force entering is reduced to powder. He threw a finger-sized pebble in as a demonstration. The pebble became weather. What followed was the most delicate robbery of my life. The sword woman named the only viable method, and I wanted on record that she named it cheerfully. Spatial technique. Teleport in from outside the sphere, appear beside the stone, take it in the instant of arrival, and leave before the shattered space finishes noticing you exist. "That's a coin flip," I said. "It's better than a coin flip. You have a spatial art. Nobody who's stood here in 1,000 years has had one." She was right, and the reason was a wolf. Shadowfang's teleportation technique, taught over wine in a doomed forest. You may travel any space you yourself have already stood in, turning out to be the load-bearing beam of a robbery 3 realms above my rank. My grandfather opened with a dragon god claw, and for the first time I saw what a domain looks like when it's used instead of described. The claw came down carrying its own law, and the shattered space screamed, an actual sound, like a mountain of glass being asked to reconsider, and shrank from 10 meters to 5. The island answered immediately. 1 bead of water dripped from the vessel under the stone, and out of bare granite an entire garden erupted. Guardian plants with domain-grade hunger in their roots, regrowing faster than the afterglow of a dragon's claw could shred them. Ao Guang and the swordwoman took that job and kept it, and I did the part nobody else could. I split. White me outside the sphere, holding the spatial passage open with both hands, sweat running into my eyes, because keeping a door open into a space that eats doors costs more than opening one. Black me, my soul clone, the trump card I'd been sitting on since the day I earned an emperor's soul, wearing black precisely so the 2 of us could tell each other apart, stepping through into the 5 remaining meters of instant death. His first grab went through the stone like a hand through smoke, not deflected, ignored. The island's law didn't want a theft, it wanted a trade. The stone is the pool's switch, and switches must remain switched. So we traded. I flicked a wooden stick through the passage, the most worthless object within reach, picked up off the path an hour earlier. The clone caught it out of the air, and in one motion, the oldest trick in every temple robber's scroll, performed inside a space that pulverizes gods, by a hand I was borrowing from my own soul, put the stick where the stone was, and the stone where the stick had been. Something down there had been about to tear that hand apart. I felt it start. I felt it stop. The stone came free with the vessel still attached beneath it. The island shuddered once, accepted the stick, and went quiet. Somewhere in the deep, I swear the pool sighed like a museum guard at closing time. "You and I are one," said the black version of me when I thanked him, and dissolved back into my soul sea before I could could get sentimental about myself. My grandfather took the life source stone into his hands with a care I'd never seen him use on anything. This is a being who handles immortal artifacts like cutlery, and then told me the price of it. Seclusion. Now. Immediately. For as long as the stone took to refine. Why now? Because something familiar has begun stirring in my memory, he said, and I would rather meet it at my full strength than explain later why I didn't. He fussed over me for one embarrassing minute. Eat properly. Don't fight above your weight for entertainment. If you slack off, I will know. Poured a measure of the stone's condensed life force into the vessel and left it with me as a parting gift. Promised the swordwoman her tithe and sank into the golden depths of the Di-Yan ring. For the first time since the void passage, the backseat of my life was empty. No commentary, no smug corrections. Just me, a jealous ruler spirit, a scheming sword, and a stolen star. I sat down at the drained core of the royal pool, alone, and found out what my grandfather's absence actually sounds like. It sounds like every decision suddenly weighing its full price. Elsewhere in the Golden Sea, the pool was busy with my people. Jinwei floated in the shallows with his eyes shut and an expression of unlawful bliss, soaking toward his next star, a dough-deep pill in his pocket. Elder Chen had quietly issued pills to him and to Liu Mei before the trip, and just as quietly skipped me, with a look that said, a pill that force-feeds a realm is wasted on a man who's about to earn one anyway. Yours comes when it'll do the most damage. And Liu Mei met the witch. The little girl in the black evening dress came up out of a whirlpool on open water, less than a meter tall, dressed for a party 1,000 years out of date, eyes too big for the face and rotating slightly in a way eyes don't. Big sister, she said, you're so pretty. Nobody pretty has come in here in ages. Stay and play with me. Liu Mei threw a spear of azure flame at her. The witch waved it into dust with a chubby hand, complimented her spirit, mentioned in passing that the other one with the fire had gone somewhere he would certainly die, and then, when my colleague tried to leave, followed her 30 kilometers across the water without appearing to move at all. I've been in this pool over 1,000 years, she said. There is nowhere here I can't reach. Give up. And then the charm technique. One spinning look, and my leaderboard queen went stiff as a doll on the waves, while that thing waddled over discussing how they'd be together forever. What saved her wasn't me. It wasn't anyone on the guest list. It was a voice from the palace's 7th layer. Space cracked open across half the pool, and one strike of black fire came through the tear and hit the witch. One strike, from something chained, that opened her from shoulder to hip and sent her diving for the deep with black blood trailing behind her. A monster even Tian Lei wouldn't fight, nearly killed in one blow by a prisoner reaching through 2 spatial layers. And through the same tear, 2 words. Ying Ying, run. Her brother. Liu Mei's missing brother, the one who told her all humans were wicked, the one whose name she'd whispered in her cabin beside Cinderwings, was in the 7th layer of this palace. Chained. Pierced through with black chains. Farmed. A living fire in the royal family's basement, held down by an old monster who called him Lan Tian, offered him wealth and glory to submit, and had been trying to devour his origin power for centuries. You said the same thing 100 years ago, the prisoner told his jailer, in the fragment the water carried. You'll say it again in another 100. She came out of the charm with tears on her face and a direction for her whole life. She didn't tell me any of it that day, not one word, all the way home. I only learned what the water heard, but I watched her stand alone on the Golden Sea afterward, azure fire packed down tight around her like a held breath, whispering a vow at the palace floor. Wait for me, brother. I know where you are now. I'll come. And above all our heads, in a lacquered room in the capital, the Xuanling king moved his pieces. The Medusa campaign accelerated because a certain 9-colored woman had entered her clan's forbidden land, and he wanted her bloodline before she finished claiming it, the dragon-devouring legion assembling, Solomon's cloaked partners nodding along while privately drafting their own betrayal, and the king privately drafting his. Everyone in that room thought they were the spider. From the bottom of the pool, I could already see the web for what it was, a wick. The pool ran on strange time. 10 days inside for every day outside, and I spent my stolen month the way a starving man spends a banquet. When the stone came out, the ground where it had hung collapsed, and a pond opened up in the granite, small, barely deeper than my shoulders, connected, by the feel of it, straight to the heart of the entire Golden Sea, which meant a concentration in that water was to the public first level what wine is to rumors of wine. Ao Guang dumped me in it like laundry. I sat in the pool of a dead race's forbidden land. In water, battle immortals would duel over, and drank golden energy out of the air through my mouth, while the flame mantra turned in me like a mill. Days blurred. On the 5th day, I noticed something settling in my soul sea that had no name in any of my 3 teachers' lessons. A golden residue that behaved like a foundation for something 2 realms above me. That's the 6-star stepping stone the royal advisor had bragged about, laid down decades early, in a body that hadn't earned it yet. Then, when I drunk until absorption stopped paying, I climbed out, sat down cross-legged, laid out my best medicinal pills in a row, and opened the vessel my grandfather had left me. The condensed life force came out of that bowl like sunrise concentrated to syrup. Life force only battle immortals may absorb, which is a rule for people who don't have 23 heavenly flames and an emperor's soul to strain it through. I refined it drop by drop, slowly, at a pace that made me want to scream, because greed in a moment like that gets a man scattered across a nice granite plateau. The month ended with the sound of something breaking upward. 4-star Do-D perfection. A full realm's worth of climbing in 30 days, on stolen royal water and a dead star's blood, with the foundations poured underneath it because I'd learned that lesson from the Do-D river. I bowed to the empty core on my way out. Something in the deep did not bow back, a presence I'd felt watching the entire robbery from start to finish, which had chosen to let it happen, and said so, once, in a voice like a closing ledger. Since it's Tianlei's choice, I won't interfere. Then it left the island entirely, now that the stone it had been keeping was gone, like a lighthouse keeper walking away from a dark lamp. One more name for the file of things sleeping under this dynasty. The witch, hiding in the deep with her wounds, suppressed her aura as it passed and said something about an old ghost touching Peak Do-D. Everyone in that pool was afraid of something one layer further down. The whole palace is built that way. At the island's rim, on my way to the exit array, I found Liu Mei mid-breakthrough, also mid-bath, which the golden water mercifully censored down to a forehead and an expression of tremendous concentration. She'd found the island, failed to get in, and settled for soaking at its edge, where the water is richest, and she'd swallowed her Do-D pill and gone straight past 5-star early at the pill's power, and then decided, while she still had fuel, to try for mid. Which is a bad idea, which she knew. Which she was doing anyway, because she'd learned in a spatial tear that her brother was chained under a palace, and every star between here and there is a month she isn't rescuing him. Her chi buckled at the summit, her face went gray. Failure at that altitude doesn't just hurt, it salts the ground for every future attempt. So I fed my flame into her climb and made a discovery that raised every hair I own. My fire was afraid of hers. 23 heavenly flames, fused into something that argues with divine punishment and eats tribulation lightning for practice. And it went into her azure flame the way a cat goes into deep water, reluctantly, sideways, with visible reservations. Her flame accepted my power, converted it, used it, and my flame never once forgot which of the two was senior. She broke through on borrowed fire and her own stubbornness. 5-star Do-D, mid-stage, straight past the entry floor. Then she surfaced, remembered the state she was in, and nearly boiled the sea while I studied the horizon like it owed me money, and passed her clothes over on a cushion of chi. What you did, she said afterward, on the shore, not looking at me. Thank you, fellow disciples. It's arithmetic. It isn't. A pause. But don't do the other thing again. Forcing a breakthrough like that, if I'd failed, I know exactly what it costs, which is why I helped instead of lecturing. I let that sit for one beat. The lecture starts now, though. Why are you being fierce? She complained, and we stood there a moment, two people who'd walked into a royal trap and come out a realm heavier each, and even the trap felt briefly worth it. Which is exactly the kind of thought the universe punishes. The exit teleport dropped us back into the 9-fish basin, and the basin was wrong. Sealed. All 9 tunnels locked. The silver dragon back on its tray, dull-eyed, its goldfish circling. Somebody far stronger than the 2 royal siblings had put that guardian back in its box on their way in. And out of a fold in the air stepped the participant nobody had announced. A figure in a black robe and hood, radiating 8 full stars of pressure and the specific patience of a man who has been paid in advance and intends to earn it slowly. His hand, where it showed, was cracked like old porcelain. He'd been sitting in this basin for a month waiting for the exit array to light up. Senior, I said, what is this? Nothing personal. I'm here to collect something from you two. A pause with a smile in it somewhere under the hood. I'll take both your lives for my own use. Then, when I didn't drop my guard, give up resistance. I am an offering of the Xuanling royal family. An offering. The Royal Ancestral Hall's private stock. The tier the dragon-devouring legion feeds into, 7-star minimum, answerable only to the king. And this one was 8, sent to erase 2 of the incense-burning pavilion's incoming class before their season's crop could grow into competition at the sect tournament. I threw the Nirvana Lotus first and negotiated second, which is the correct order. 23 flames in full bloom bought us 4 seconds. He met the lotus with a palm full of golden death chi, went through the outer petals like a man opening a curtain, and walked out of the detonation with his sleeve smoking, coughing once, which, I noted, is one more cough than nothing. Then I reached for the immortal body and found the basin's space sealed against Do-D body arts too. Of course it was. The royals had built their killing floor in their own house, to their own specifications, in a basin where the pool's own formation suppresses exactly the technique a 10th grade body needs. 4 stars against 8. No grandfather in the ring, deep in seclusion with a stolen star, beyond reach, beyond waking, no immortal body, no exits, no reinforcements, and a master who thought we were on a bathing trip. I sent Liu Mei a soul message. I hold him. You run for the tunnels the instant a gap opens. No, that wasn't a, are you joking? He's 8 stars. I disagree. I absolutely disagree. Her fire came up around her, and this time it came up differently. And I only know that if you keep going like this, you'll die. And then she stopped arguing with me and started answering him. The azure flame came off her body in a way I have never seen fire move. Not burning, presiding. A holiness rolled out across that sealed basin, and the assassin's killing intent flickered like a candle candle reconsidering its career. My own soul sea shivered, not from pressure, from recognition. "The flames on you are extraordinary," the black robe said, and for the first time his voice had appetite in it instead of arithmetic. "Why not give them to me?" She ignored him completely, which I found instructive. And in the middle of it, quiet as a girl passing a note in class, her soul voice arrived in my head with the sentence that rewrote everything I thought I knew about my leaderboard rival. "This flame of mine is a sacred flame. I just can't control it yet." A sacred flame, not hidden in a palace basement, not sealed in a royal reliquary behind 7 layers of legion, standing next to me on a stone floor, wearing a girl who had blushed about a bath towel 20 minutes ago, the little sister of a change fire on the 7th layer, the walking continuation of every secret this rotten dynasty had buried under its pool. 36 sacred flames in 7 realms, Zhenwu's whole assignment. One of them had spent a month in the same forest as me, taken second place on a leaderboard, and asked my little brother's opinion about weapon spirits. And deep in my own soul sea, for the first time since that coffin in the wolf cave, the seed of Cinderwing moved, turned over, woke up hungry. The assassin tilted his head at her fire the way a jeweler tilts his head at an uncatalogued gem, and I understood 3 things with total clarity. He wasn't leaving without our lives. A king had commissioned it, and men at his level don't return contracts. She wasn't leaving without his full attention, because he just recalculated what was standing in this basin and revised his fee upward by a realm. And I wasn't leaving at all, because everything I'd spent this entire climb collecting, the ruler with a dragon in it, the parasite in my palm, the clone that can stand where I can't, the golden armor of a dead war's greatest wall, the stolen star's strength still settling in my meridians, had been assembling itself, piece by piece, month by month, for exactly this kind of locked room. So I rolled my shoulders, took the heavenly flame ancient ruler off my back, and smiled at the 8th star shadow of the king who'd been trying to own me since the day I said no. The royal family had sent 1 offering to take 2 lives. They should ask the ghost emperor how that math worked out for him. Half a year ago, I fell out of a hole in the sky as a level 1 nobody with a homeless dragon and a scattered family. Now a king was spending his ancestral hall's assassins on me. A sacred flame was standing at my shoulder, another one was stirring in my soul, and my wife was somewhere in these same 3 heavens, 5 years from opening her eyes. The Xuanling king thinks he put 2 names on a kill list. He actually signed his dynasty up for a demolition schedule, and the first appointment was already standing in his basement, holding a ruler, smiling.